What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of our Call You Right Back podcast with me, your host. My name is Chad Medved, and this is my podcast. And to be completely transparent, I am having a hell of a week. I have been nothing but stressed this week. I've been overwhelmed, and, one of the main reasons is because, it is the vehicle to the guest this week. You know what I mean? But before we get to that, Turner Dairy Farms is releasing brand new merchandise with Steel City. If you don't know who Steel City is a clothing brand in the city that is basically, anything Pittsburgh that you could think of is on one of their t-shirts. If there's a saying, if there's, I don't even know how to, they definitely do all the Pittsburgh stuff. I could say that. But Turner's and Steel City are doing a collaboration. I believe it's May 1st it's dropping. But I'm excited about that. But until then, it is Turner's weather. You know what I mean? Sunny weather out right now. Run on down to your local bodega, and I know they will have a cooler full of them ice cold Thug Jugs. But as I was saying, the vehicle for the guest this week is, is one of the roots of my anxiety and stress. My dog Nadja, I've talked about her on here a couple times. We adopted her recently, and I was looking for a dog trainer, and I was referred to Tena Parker from Success Just Clicks. I was referred to her by Alli from Biggies Bullies, and you could actually hear my wife yelling at the dog right now, and you could hear the dog barking because she is losing her fucking mind recently. I don't even know. I'm just stressed out. Hopefully, God bless my wife. She's here all day doing this, but I hit up Tena, and I am currently enrolled in her class to go training. You know what I mean? The dog sounds insane right now. It's overwhelming to me, but this week I sit down with Tena Parker from Success Just Clicks Dog Training. And for the record, I have not gone to Tena yet. I just went to the consultation, but I am super excited by how it was conducted. But me and Tena sit down and we talk about how she became a dog trainer. You know what I mean? I've never talked to a dog trainer that does it professionally, and I have no idea how people get involved in that, and she has a pretty interesting story. It's not like she just immediately wanted to be a dog trainer. She actually did a lot of really impressive stuff. And, she is my dog trainer. I start classes end of April. And let me tell you, I need them. So it's going to be real life proof, and I will keep you updated. I'm going to go to Tena, and I'm going to put 7,000% into training Nadja because she is batshit. That's it. She's batshit. She's a puppy, though. So we just have to ride this wave, and there's going to be, we're going to put Tena to the test. We are going to put Tena to the test. Anytime Nadja flips out, like while me and Antoinette are just chilling, we'll be like, Tena, because we know that, hopefully we're going to go to Tena, and she is going to become a well-mannered dog because she's out of pocket sometimes. I call it as it is. You know what I mean? I call it as it is. She is out of pocket sometimes. We'll just be sitting there, and she just gets up wanting to get buck wild, nipping at us, and I'm just like, Jesus, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. My wife got to do this shit every day because she works from home. And it is a blessing because, she's like, them stickers from back in the day that were like, 20% or like 20% devil, 80% angel. You would get them at like the skating rinks. Nadja's like, I don't know her ratio, but it's closer to 50-50, to be honest with you. But I love sitting down talking to Tena because I got this dog and I immediately, I'm all in on it. I'm researching, I'm doing anything I can to improve my relationship with my dog and to learn to communicate better. And that is why I sought out a dog trainer, and Tena's values are aligned with my and my wife's values. We didn't want any negative or negative reinforcement, whatever the word is, but we didn't want to use like shock collars or prong collars or anything. We wanted to do positive reinforcement, and we want to be able to build, you know, a different bond than just like zapping someone with a fucking collar. But hey, if you do it, I get it. It works. You know, I don't judge you for it, but listen to what me and Tena talk about. It's just interesting. And if you have a pup and, you know, I mean, even if you had them for years, it's just interesting to hear about some of the things that we're talking about, because this is in the mind of a trainer with a psychology background, and it's pretty fascinating. So without further ado, episode 158 of I'll Call You Right Back podcast with Tena Parker of Success Just Clicks Dog Training.
I gotta use the telephone.
Hello?
Telephone.
I'll call you right back. Call you right back.
Telephone.
I'll Call You Right Back podcast. So I appreciate you coming to do this. I've been I've been looking forward to this very, very much. I feel that it's cool that you brought the dog, because I feel like it's a different level of immersion of it. You know what I mean? But he's definitely a cool dog.
He is. He's a good boy.
How much does he weigh?
Just about 40.
40? That's it? 40 pounds? Mm-hmm. He looks so tall. We're struggling to like try to figure out how big we think Nadja will be. Mm-hmm. And like we're taking guesses and everything. And like right now, I think that she's like 24.
How old is she?
November 16th. So she's like 4.5 months.
If you roughly double their weight at about 4 months,
that's
within
what
about
I see.
10%, it's about there.
That's what I see. So 50 pounds, like I can't even imagine what she's going to look like. And, but there's been people that, we're part of these like Facebook groups and everything. And there's people that are like posting pictures. They're like, oh my God, it looks just like my dog. Mm-hmm. And, someone posted a picture. It's the most similar dog. It was a
Bernese Mountain Dog?
No, it was a Barrington Terrier or Bennington Terrier.
Okay.
Mixed with a Whippet. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, that's so weird, because, you know, Nadja is the poodle, like mutt mix. And it's weird how they look so similar, but can be completely different. But, so I'm curious to know how you got involved with all this, because I've never spoke to a dog trainer in depth about things, and it's just it's an interesting career. So I'm curious about it.
It is interesting.
I bet it's interesting, because like you're communicating with people. Well, not people, but you're communicating with animals that you can't talk to.
Yeah.
So it's like you have this whole different level of like understanding that's like so. I don't know. It seems overwhelming to me, just from being, you know, I've had dogs my whole life, but I've never been like, you know, the dog owner and like, you know, responsible for this dog myself. Mm-hmm. Have you been grown up around dogs your entire life?
Yeah. So I was actually born a couple weeks after my family dog had puppies. And so like I was in, and she sort of adopted me. She would lay next to the couch with me as an infant. She would choose to hang out. My mom tells a story that when I was, I don't remember how old I was, but I was pretty young, still infanty, so probably under a month or two old, where she actually pulled my like onesie into the whelping box.
What kind of dog is it?
She was an English bulldog.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been around them literally since I was born, kind of immersed into dogs. And, yeah. So
and like family has always been, you know, dog people and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, my family was always, I grew up with 3 English bulldogs. And then when I was old enough, I was finally allowed to get something that was a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
Not that English bulldogs aren't fun, but I wanted to like do fun trick training and fun sports. And the bulldogs we had were like, yeah, no, I'd like to lay down.
Yeah, I want to just hang out.
Yeah, they were not into the training thing. And because even as a kid, I liked to train my dogs and would like to do, you know, tricks and whatnot. So.
Where does that come from though? Like, how did you even start to learn to do that?
I don't know. I think the first dog I got was just a lab mix mutt of some sort.
Yeah.
And we took her to a training class. I've no idea who the trainer was anymore. It was somewhat local. And I started, it was my responsibility. So I did the class, and I think I just got started with that. Like,
That's
it was
pretty
interesting
cool.
and fun. And I'm an only child. So it's like, well, the dogs are, that's a sibling. That's someone I can entertain myself with.
Yeah, a counterpart, a partner. So, like, from a young age, that you knew that you wanted to train dogs?
No.
Okay.
So it was going to be a veterinarian, but then I can't handle the sad side of veterinary stuff.
I
so
know.
It's like, game
my
over.
God. That would be so just like devastating to me.
Yeah, no.
I can't even watch it in like movies or anything like that. Like if like an animal gets like hurt in a movie or something like that, I'll like lose it. I could not imagine. Obviously there's so much positive and you're doing so many good things, but like, I don't know if I could get past, like having to put a dog down or anything like that. Yeah.
And I think if that and dealing with people is hard because people are very impatient and, veterinarians get the short end of the stick a lot. Right. So they tell all the bad news and, people don't necessarily believe them when they say, hey, this is a really big problem. You should probably go do this. And then the owners don't do that. And then the dog has an issue. And then the owners are angry at the vet. And the vet's like, well, I told you.
It's definitely a heavy job because it's like the patient that you're dealing with is like, it doesn't understand, you can't communicate. You can't like say like, oh, you have an injury here. You can't put weight on it or anything. Like Nadja got spayed and she, but before she got spayed, she's like ripping around. She all of a sudden starts like jumping off the back of the couch sometimes if she gets like these zoomies. So I'm like, man, like the dog is going to need to be like kind of, relaxed for, they said 14 days. So we were like, what the hell are we going to do? But we were like dosing her with this stuff that they give us, and it really was working because it just put her completely out. But we took her to the vet, and she's been having problems with her ears. But the vet is like, it was so like weird to be able to like, not all dogs are going to be like super nice to the vet. I imagine for sure, but luckily she is. We don't have to deal with her, being pissed off and like biting at someone.
It's scared. It's not angry. They're scared. Could you imagine not understanding what's happening to you?
Yeah, not
and
pissed
then
off.
You get hurt.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They tend to be really scared, and it's weird, and it's a small room, and all they smell is stress hormones from the dogs that were in there before there, and so they're like, what happens in this room?
I never thought about that.
It smells very scary. Yeah.
Yeah, stress hormones. I guess, that's definitely a thing. And hearing everything around, like, I went to the vet the other day, and that was the first time I took her. Antoinette usually goes, but there's a kennel attached to the vet, so it's like you hear these dogs howling and not just like what the hell is going on, like freaked out for sure, which is understandable. But yeah, it's definitely a heavy job to work with pets, I'm sure, because you don't know what you're getting into.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, there's a reason I did not go into veterinary stuff, and it wasn't the dislike of science, because I super like science. That doesn't bother me. I don't have like a weak stomach about stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like that stuff was always fine. It was the hard part of having to euthanize pets and dealing with the people and kind of seeing the short end of the stick. So my aunt is a veterinarian, so I spent some time at her vet clinic and kind of just doing cleanup stuff and easy stuff. But like I had a view of that, and I was like, yeah, I'm not entirely sure that's what I really want to do with the rest of my life.
I did. I was in Boy Scouts, and I had like a business. It was like a business merit badge or something, but someone in our troop, his dad was a vet at White Oak Veterinary Clinic. So I went and shadowed him, and I was there for 1 weekend or 2 days during the week. Sometime I had to spend like 4 hours a day there and then write a big paper after. And the first day was cool. I got to see dogs getting their nails cut, ears clean, teeth checked and everything. But then the next day I saw dogs getting neutered, and I almost passed out. I was like, what the hell? And it's not that like I get queasy about things. It's just like, it makes me feel uneasy that it feels like that they're being hurt, but they're obviously like not. But yeah, it's definitely a wild job to go into that. You gotta be a special type of.
Yeah, I mean the veterinarians are amazing, and they are responsible for being, general practitioner physicians, ophthalmologists, dental or dentists, and sometimes dental surgeons, and and not just for one species. So when we think about humans, we have pediatricians, and they only deal with human children under 18. And then we have like ophthalmologists. All they do is look at eyeballs. And veterinarians have
That's a good point.
They have to do all of these things, at least basic level. Like
know a basic level of it all.
Right. They refer out for important stuff and kind of challenging things, but they have to know a basic level of things for all of the body for multiple species, which is
we had to wait longer because the guy that was checking her out, he was the only guy that knew about birds. And there was like a bird emergency there. And the lady came in, she was like, hey, the vet, there's a bird emergency. Like he has to focus. I was like, oh, take your time. Like who am I to get in front of a bird emergency, right?
Yeah, it's a challenging piece just because of the breadth of knowledge they have to have. Which makes it sometimes a little bit hard because they don't, specialize in all the things, and people think that they do, that they can ask them every question, that they're definitely an expert on everything. And they have to have such a massive body of knowledge that, with the outlier things that aren't as common for them. And
throw that in with like the asshole customer, or like the asshole like owners that like, not everyone is going to be an asshole, but like you have it in any sort of, job, retail, anything like that. I worked in car service. It's just like, some people are just like ridiculous.
They're pushy.
And pushy, that to say the least. So, I mean, like at what age do you think that you were able to like mentally comprehend that you couldn't be a vet?
I was probably 16, 15, 16. Yeah, I was a little bit older, but I was, I don't know what he found. Oh, cookies.
That was a piece of a treat up there. I hope he's allowed to have it. It's a good one. It's a bocce one or whatever.
Yeah, no, he's fine. He's just tall.
Yeah,
he is not that tall.
Not that tall yet. That's what I think. That's my fault.
It doesn't matter. He's fine.
But like, so 16 now, are you doing anything with dogs up until then, except for, training your family dogs?
I was training my own dogs. I was, I had done a couple like, the Humane Society. It was a Humane Society used to do like a kids camp. So I'd done the kids camp. But it wasn't anything crazy. It was just kind of that sort of stuff. And then I went to, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was going to college. I was interested in photography at the time. And so it's like, photojournalism is fun because I like to write. And I like to take pictures. I'm like, well, that kind of works. So that was, I think when I graduated high school, that was kind of the trajectory I was thinking of. And so that did not happen. Yeah,
such an interesting, we talk about it on here all the time. It's such an interesting dynamic of being 16, 17 and people being like, oh, you have to figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life right now. And you're just like, it's like, go to see. I mean, and finally we're like kind of, evolving from that archaic, go to school, get a job, get married, have kids, die, and now people are like, people are being able to make money off of a cell phone and be very entrepreneurial. And it's cool to like see that that's like kind of evolving through. I know people that are making, full-time jobs on playing video games. Kid from my high school, it's wild.
Yeah, no, we have lots of options.
Lots of options.
And you don't have to, part of living longer is that you don't have to make a final decision early. Like you can have a job for several years and then be like, you know what? I'd like to totally change career paths.
Absolutely.
And it's not a big deal to do that in your 30s or your 40s. And you can kind of, change plans and do something that you'd rather do. And a lot of people who have,
pivot,
who do dog training as like a second career later in life, that they were, doing their big boy, big girl jobs of whatever that was and, making their money. And they're like, you know what? I don't think I really want to spend my life in my office all the time.
Absolutely.
And they're like, left turn, let's go do something else.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you're, kind of focusing on photojournalism, like where does your life take you after that? Like how did you pursue that fully?
No. So when I went to college, so chance plays such a role in how I got to where I got. So I went to college in New York, and my game plan was to do photography as a big piece. And I did do photography for a lot of it. I worked in the darkroom for 3 or 4 years. I was there as a darkroom attendant. But my first year study, so the school I went to is a really small liberal arts school, and we have a specific advisor that you meet with regularly, and they are your like first year studies primary professor.
Yeah.
And the class I got was like number 6 on my list of 6. I didn't really want to take the class. I wasn't real happy I got that's where I got placed. And part of the class was you had to work in the lab school for pre-K students. So we have on the campus, we had, a daycare lab school where we have kids two through kindergarten, and you were required to 1 day a week go to teach one of those classes or be a helper in the class, whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have a class I don't want. And on top of the class time I have to do, I also have to go and spend 4 hours a week, teaching preschool kids. And I'm like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
I was really unhappy, didn't want to do it. Turns out though that I really liked it. I had a blast. I loved watching kids grow and seeing them learn and watching them kind of take in the world and how they,
are able to comprehend it.
Yeah,
a little
build
bit
off
more.
what they learn, and how the adults and the even just little things like the language we use around kids, how that can influence them.
Yeah,
and being thoughtful about the language we use. And so I really enjoyed it, and I kind of kept on that path. And so what I ultimately did was I have my bachelor's in psychology because that was always interesting to me.
Yeah,
and then I ultimately decided to do a 5-year master's program. So I just added another year to my undergrad to get my master's in education.
Oh, wow.
So the game plan at that point was actually to be a math and science specialist with like upper elementary type students.
Yeah.
But graduating in 2009 with my master's, it's the height of that earlier recession.
Yeah.
Where most of the schools were laying off teachers. Almost nobody was hiring. And because there were so many other teachers laid off, the schools that were hiring had a ton of teachers that already had
experience
3 or 4
everything.
years under their belt, right? So not so much that they had to pay them a lot, but enough that they're like, yeah, we'll take a person who has 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, you're a little bit more
experience.
qualified or whatever.
Exactly. So I was like, well,
wow,
can't get a job, have a master's degree, still can't get a job. And so I found a job working for Cornell University, their 4-H extension program. So I was doing after-school programming in science and nutrition and art with kids from, I think they're like 6-year-olds, kindergarten, 5-6-year-olds, all the way up to 18-year-olds in a variety of New York communities. And so I was in Westchester County, and Westchester is just above the city. And so you have the lower part of Westchester, you have a lot of really disenfranchised communities. Some of the schools that I taught in, they had student taught in. The homelessness rate was astronomical. Like 40 to 60% of the students were considered homeless.
Jeez.
And so we have some of those students at the bottom part of the county. When you went further north, you had some rather expensive homes, really wealthy communities. And so I got to work with a really broad range of students. And that was super fun. And I loved my job and I had a great time. And then they lost funding.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they retroactively lost funding. When the new administration came in after an election, they were like, yeah, no, we are retroactively taking away the funding that we gifted you.
Yeah.
And so they lost the extension office lost funding for, I think, 3 of our jobs. And so I was like,
Nadja was taking a nap. She probably saw him up the top of the steps.
poor buddy. I was like, I don't think that's
She
him.
just started howling. She just started. We have a weird toy that it's like this.
Honks.
It's this indestructible squeaker, but it's the only squeaker that makes her do this. And the one day I was sitting there squeaking it, and she just let out this long, drawn out howl, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And sometimes she'll do it if she's feeling a certain type
I'm
of way.
having some feels about this.
Yeah.
I get it.
But that's a shame. So they pulled that, and
Yeah.
you were kind of like left out in the dark.
Yeah, so I'd had that job for literally just 6 months, and the only reason they kept me on, so when they lost funding for me, I'd only been there for 5.5 months, which
Yeah.
means I would not qualify for unemployment.
Yeah.
And so they kept me on for another 2 weeks so I would qualify for unemployment because it was kind of a crappy situation.
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
Hey, here's a brand new job. And I had just, I got a second dog. I'm like, I'm finally financially solvent. I can have money.
Absolutely.
And then, oh, wait, change of plans. So I didn't have a job, and I was up there. I was looking for teaching jobs and kind of.
And how old are you at this time?
22, 23.
Okay.
Yeah, something around there.
So you're just like, I mean, you're trying to put down roots and, become an adult and,
yes,
trying
real hard.
Yeah, trying real hard to do that. That's a shame that happened, at that period of time. So you adapted, I assume.
Yeah, so I stayed in New York for another 7 or 8 months, I think it was. And then I was like, I'm clearly not going to find a job up here. It's just, it wasn't working. And New York rates for your housing is astronomical.
Ridiculous, I'm sure.
Like, well, I cannot afford to stay here without a job and without prospects of a job that will pay me enough to pay my massive rent bill every month.
Absolutely.
So thankfully I have fabulous mommy who let me come move back in with her.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, the skill set I have at the time I had, in between all this, I had gotten a dog that had major resource guarding issues.
What does that mean?
So she would bite you if you try to take something of value away from her. So if she
really?
had food and you try to take it, or for her, even if you just walked by, she would be kind of gnarly about it.
Is this a rescue that you rescued?
Yeah,
like how old was
she? Was a shelter dog she was about 9 months old when I got her from the shelter.
Okay.
They knew about the resource guarding issues. And I wasn't bothered by that. I've had, I'm comfortable following directions on how to fix resource guarding, and resource guarding, if I'm going to have a dog that has aggression issues, that's probably the easiest one to fix for the most part, if you go about it the right way.
Yeah.
And so I was like, that's no big deal. She was shy in the shelter. She was underweight.
Did you have any sort of training beforehand, like official training at all?
No. I
mean,
besides having trained a bunch of my dogs and...
Yeah, you just had experience of doing it.
I had experience in general training. I hadn't done anything behavioral at that point. But boy, did I learn some things very quickly with her.
With that dog?
Yeah. So I got this dog. She had issues. After we got her home and she had gained weight and she had gotten out of the shelter environment, she became much worse than what she was in the shelter.
Really?
Yeah.
Like meaner?
Yeah. She was not mean. She was really scared.
Scared, yeah.
So she was really scared, and because she was scared, she would get a little bit reactive and snarky, and she was lovely to me and the family in the house after we got the resource guarding dealt with, but she was reactive to dogs on leash. She was reactive to some people. She probably would have bitten a man if she had the opportunity when I got her. So I kind of did a deep dive into behavior training for her, and through that, I gained a heck of a lot of skills. I met a lot of really good people.
Yeah.
And after fixing all of her issues, and by the time she died last year, and I don't know, by the time she was 5 or so, she was really quite a normal dog. Like
that's great.
Yeah, no resource guarding, that got fixed really quickly, but her dog issues, her people issues.
What do you think that comes from? Just her having that like prison mentality of like, I'm like stuck in this place. Like whatever's mine is like, I want to,
For her, so I don't know her exact story on her background. The story I'd gotten from the Humane Society that she was tied up to a tree outside of someone's trailer, and they said that it wasn't their dog, and who knows? So she did not, it was likely that she did not get the appropriate socialization that she needed.
Yeah. And
there's always a potential for genetics. Genetics plays a huge role in behavior, and people don't necessarily know that.
Oh, yeah.
And so, whatever she came from in terms of her mom and her dad could have had guarding issues, or could have had, fear issues, or whatever it is. So
that's so interesting. I like, obviously with her, I've been reading a little bit more into it all, and like how that is, because I follow these couple pages, and one of them is like canine enrichment, which is like, there's 300,000 people on there. So there's a lot of content that you could read through. And I've been reading about like, how like the genetics will, go down through there, and how that is such an important part, and how that could play such a huge role in it all. And like, I don't know, I feel like that, like, maybe whenever I was younger, I like kind of subscribed to the more archaic, you really didn't like, dogs just ate food. They went outside, did their business, came in, slept. I didn't know anything about like the enrichment, stimulating their minds and like doing other things to like try to, really like, have them flourish, like, do puzzles and things like that. So it's really been like refreshing to, kind of deep dive into this because I want her to have like the best life that she could have. So it makes me want to do the research and like all the homework that I'm doing. But that's interesting. I came across that through that.
It is. I mean, I think we have, our lives as humans have changed and our social nature has changed over, obviously over the course of time, but, since we've had our current kind of lifestyles. And I think one of the things that we miss is that back in the 50s, a lot of times you weren't in super suburban-y type areas. People had a little bit more space and people would just let the dogs out.
Yeah.
Right. And the dogs would go out, spend the day outside, running around, rolling and stuff, playing with their other dog friends, and then come home at night. And, the good dogs survived, and the ones that were not good dogs, quote, would either get lost or get run over, which was a bad part of it. But they had that a little bit more enriched, natural, normal, species appropriate behaviors. Yeah, we don't have that as much here. So a lot of times we don't have access to just letting dogs be dogs and letting them do the natural dog behaviors, because a lot of those behaviors are counter to what our human nature is. So, my dog is digging holes in the yard. Yes, that is what dogs do. Yeah. We want to keep our yards safe so you don't break your ankle running around, but we have to then kind of compensate for that. So we have lots of changes in our world that prevent dogs from doing species appropriate things. And because of that, that's where the enrichment, I think, becomes so important. Yeah. Is that they just don't have the same access to things necessarily. We have a lot more people in urban environments that have dogs now. It used to be that you just didn't see as many dogs in urban environments because it was perceived to be harder to do that when part of dog ownership was just letting them out and letting them run and kind of doing that stuff, and you can't in a city. Yeah, that makes sense. So that's where I think enrichment became such an important part, is that we lost some of that natural dogs do this type of behavior access to that. And so now we're giving them, human created versions of that, which is great. Dogs need it. I think a lot of times some of our problems, behaviors, are just that the dogs haven't had a chance to be, they haven't used their brains. Yeah, they haven't been able to scratch that itch of like that certain thing. And it's so interesting because like, I think about, like I said, I had dogs my entire life, but I don't, I remember us having like Nyla bones for the dogs, but like other than that, like there's so many different toys now. Like her, like Naja's favorite toy is like this stump that has these two stuffed animals and she could pull them out. But like, it's crazy how much time she spends with it and how much like, how much entertainment. And we have like them lick mats now. And instead of her just like, usually growing up, we would just put our dog's food in a bowl, they'd scarf it down, and then that was it. You'd watch, take them outside. But now it's like, it's so much more interesting to, be an adult and be able to like see her mental change along the way and like see her like work out these problems and like, I thought it was like, I didn't know that like a dog using their senses and things like that would tire them out in a way that exercise was. I was like, oh, they're just puppies. They need exercised until they can't even open their eyes anymore. But obviously, that's something that I've learned since we got the dog, that's not necessarily the way. And it's interesting how much more, we have so many more resources now too, because, back then our parents didn't have cell phones that you could just, Google anything you want. Facebook and find out.
Buy toys on Amazon that you can't find anywhere else. And, that's a big factor too. But it's cool that, it's cool to see that like, kind of transcend into this whole elevated world.
And I think a lot of our dogs are having, although they're missing out on some species appropriate behaviors, I think we're able to make sure they are still having good quality of life, and they're not just, laying on the floor all day and not doing dog things. Yeah. And I think the flip side is that we also have a lot of dogs that kind of need that. So I think when we look at the types of dogs that we had, 50, 60 years ago, I think we had a lot of the dogs were a little bit more that classic picture of what a Labrador is.
Yeah.
They're just,
that's what we had.
Laying around.
Our lab was, he was like a Muppet. He just he never understood, we tried. He just never got it.
Yeah.
And he was just kind of a goofy dog that could never, if he was off the leash, gone. He had no attention. I don't know. He was just wild to describe. But then, we had a lab, and then we had we had a Cocker Spaniel. She was kind of leave me alone a little bit, which is fine. We were young. And then we had Cockapoos. My mom got Cockapoos, and they're not dogs that want to go ripping through the woods really. We let them out. They just want to chill, and it's interesting to see different personalities because I grew up around those. We just want to chill on the couch and, we'll come and, snuggle against you. But it's so weird to see how different Naja is compared to them. And it's I just assumed, whenever we got this dog, I was oh, they're going to be like the Cockapoos. You know what I mean? Everything's going to be fine. But it's a whole world that is completely different. And I think it's so interesting because, again, it's back to the resource of the phone. We could just look anything we want up in the world. We don't have to go to a library. We don't have to do anything like that. And you could just dive deeper and deeper in it.
And the cool thing is, I think the information is always evolving. So when we look at science in general, it's always changing.
Yeah.
Right? It's not the science that so obviously there's baseline science that doesn't typically change, gravity, but
a lot of it updates.
Right, it updates. We change things. The medical, mastery of the 50s, we don't use a lot of that anymore because we're we have discovered better things.
Yeah.
And with the availability of the internet and the phone, it allows you to stay up to date with kind of as things change.
Yeah.
So, I remember as a kid having, was it the Encyclopedia Britannica?
Yeah.
I think my parents got in the house.
Having a whole bookshelf full of
right.
it.
So we had access to a lot of information, but that information, 2 seconds later, it's out of date.
Yeah.
And so I think we have that option now to be able to stay up to date on information and watch as things evolve. And when you see other people, that collaborative nature of, I see someone doing this, I'm going to try that and see if I can make it better. And so I think we have, I see this a lot in the training world. We are all pushing each other and kind of seeing ideas as they develop and taking that and being okay, I'm going to tweak that a little bit for what I want because I think it's going to work better.
Yeah.
And, by doing this, I think we've accelerated the speed of learning and change and,
I like the idea of pushing each other. It's you guys are all, there's a baseline of rules and things that you learn, but everyone has their own mindset. So everyone has their own creative spin and way to look at it. And it's so overwhelming as a new dog owner to go. It's
overwhelming as a real professional in there too.
Absolutely. Because if you go online, you have 1,000 different ways of training. Whenever we were looking for a dog trainer, I looked at, the 10 people around Pittsburgh that were, that came up whenever I Googled it. And it's it all fits to everyone. Some people believe in the prong collar and, things like that, which is understandable. I get why people believe in that. And you could see, visible proof of progression through dogs, but, it's just everyone's personal preference. I don't want a dog. I don't want my dog to, I don't want to have to scare my dog into, listening to me. I would rather gain it through a base of trust and things like that. And that's why I decided to go with Success Just Clicks. And it's cool. It's cool to, see everyone's different ways, because even though I watch videos with the people that will use the prong collars and everything like that, you could still gain knowledge from them, and adapt it in your way. And I think that that's another benefit of having, the reach that we have now. It's we could read all these different things. It's anything, politics, religion, everything. You take it all in as much as you want. That's the way I am, at least. I take everything in on my own. I chew it up and I come out with my own, version of it. Mm-hmm. And and it's cool to see, you know, like how you adapt your version and like having some sort of like firsthand experience with it. Like I felt so overwhelmed at first whenever we came to see you, but I felt so like, it felt so thorough, and it felt like that you went a different level to try to understand, you know, what the person is dealing with. Like we had to fill out, like it was a pretty lengthy, thorough survey. And that's honestly what made me choose you, is because I was like, you know, if she's asking these questions that make me sit there and think about like our life, it's like she's wants to kind of have a day in the life of like our mind. It's interesting.
And I think, so for me, my process, my background in psychology and my background in education really helps dictate how I do my job now.
Yeah.
And what I know is that for me to be able to help you, I need to really understand the problems.
Yeah.
Because if I don't understand your problems and I am trying to change those problems and fix them so they're no longer problems, but I don't understand them, I'm not necessarily going to be as effective as I could be.
Absolutely.
And so having more information and getting that, you know, those nitty gritty details out, because sometimes it is as easy as finding something that your schedule is weird. And that's, I think, part of what it was with nausea is that, you know, if I didn't ask those detailed questions, I couldn't give you a really quick, like, hey, change this, like 2 little things and everything is going to be better.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, I think that's not a mistake, but it is a benefit to my approach, is that we can look at the whole picture and not just the behavior. And that's kind of where I am very different from a lot of the trainers that utilize punishment-based approaches or aversive tools, is that for me, it's not about the behavior itself. So my dog, my challenging, gonna bite you dog, it wasn't about how do I correct her for trying to bite me when I take her food, because I don't think that fixes our problem.
Yeah.
It is highly likely that if I correct her for doing that, eventually it's either she's going to really nail me hard because she finally finds something valuable enough that she's like, you know what?
Don't take it away.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
Like, I know this is going to be bad for me, but it is worth it to nail her because I really want whatever this is. Or I have a dog that I correct that issue, but because I didn't fix what was driving that problem, something new pops up. And I see that a ton.
Yeah.
Where, you know, we either a person has gone to another trainer, or even with myself, that we're working on a problem. So this dog is reactive and we are doing lots of stuff on resolving that reactivity, and the dog's reactivity is so much better. But as that got better, we now have something new popping up.
Yeah, it's like someone who has a hurt leg. It's like they favor that one leg, and then the other one starts to have problems because you're favoring that one leg.
And so what was the problem from the first leg? And that's what I try to fix. So if it's an anxiety-driven behavior, I try to make sure that we're addressing the anxiety. Because, you know, my dog is still anxious. I have, through either positive options or punishment-based options, or reward-based options, or punishment-based options, I have resolved that problem. But if the anxiety still persists, I often get a dog that starts having another issue because we didn't actually fix the problem.
Wow.
What we did was kind of address the behavior, but now we're still stuck in the same. Right. And so when I'm approaching behavior stuff, I'm really trying to approach it from what's causing the behavior, what's driving the behavior, so I can fix that part. So my dog, who is resource guarding, she was terrified that I was going to take her resources because she was a dog that had a history of being starved.
Yeah.
She was underweight when I got her, and she'd been in the shelter for a couple weeks before I got her.
So that she probably gained some weight there.
She had already gained weight.
Yeah.
And so she was just really afraid that I was going to take her stuff.
Wow.
And that's what was driving that behavior. So her resource guarding got fixed probably within a month or two.
What do you do? Like, how do you fix something like that?
So if you are afraid that I'm going to steal your stuff, and that's why you're being a jerk to me. If every time I come over, I bring you more things, I bring you things, I bring you things, you eventually start realizing that I'm not a taker of your things. I'm a bringer of other things.
Yeah, you're a giver.
Right. And so I would, when she was just laying down with like a toy, something she would not guard, I would come up, I'd throw some chicken at her, I'd walk away. And over time, what happened is every time I approached her, she would lift her head away from whatever she had and was like, ooh.
Attention, like, what am
do
I
you
going to get now?
have?
Yeah,
I'm very interested in this. And so her emotional response to my approach was no longer, oh my God, she's going to take my stuff.
Oh.
Her emotional response was, ooh, what does she have?
Yeah.
And so I just built up her ability to have that same emotional response with higher value things. So when she was, years later, an adult dog, she was a raw fed dog for a long time. And part of raw feeding for what I did, she would have large pieces of meat she was working on over the course of several days.
Yeah.
And I'd have to take that back. And it's not, people are always like, when they're dealing with resource guarding, people are like trade, which isn't bad. Trading is great. Trade for sure.
Trading meaning like take one thing and give her another.
I'll give you something and then take the thing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to trade you for it. But there comes a point where I cannot get anything more valuable than the 4-pound roast my dog has.
Yeah.
Right. And so what I needed there was for my dog to not be concerned when I approached. So she would have her 4-pound roast. Yeah. And I'd be like, well, you cannot eat 4 pounds. I need to take that back.
Yeah.
And so because the bigger pieces of meat were useful for teeth cleaning and things like that. So anyway, so I would approach her. She'd have her giant hunk of meat. And what normally happened is her tail would start wagging. And with the big meat things, she had a harder time giving them up because that is the most valuable thing to her.
Oh, yeah.
But she would wag her tail as I approached and lift her head away from the food. And I would then offer her a different piece of food and I take the meat away and we're fine. That like my approach did not mean I'm going to take your stuff because I would approach her when she was eating and add more food anyway. So she had her roast, not at that point, but when I was doing the training.
You're setting the groundwork of it.
Yeah. So once I have the good emotional response, it tends to stay that way unless I start taking all their things again. Okay. So when I first had her and she was working on, a bully stick, something that, because she would guard that. She would guard many food, pretty much anything food she would guard. She would have her bully stick. I'd approach and I'd throw chicken at her feet and I'd walk away. And then I'd approach and throw chicken and I'd walk away. And it didn't take her terribly long to she would drop everything she had when I approached and be like, ooh.
Yeah, there's more chicken.
Right.
Coming.
I get tail wags and she doesn't care because she didn't see me as a threat to her item anymore. And so it was very, not easy because it was work, but it wasn't difficult work to get her to change her emotion.
She was kind of receptive to learning that you were a good rather than a bad figure.
Yes, I'm a bringer of good things, not the taker of things. And so the rare time I actually had to take it, it wasn't a big deal because I'd been a bringer so much more often.
Yeah.
But I fixed that pretty quickly and it never showed up again.
Yeah.
Like we had years and years and years, no resource guarding, no problems. And it's not because I fixed the resource guarding, I fixed the emotion that was causing the problem in the first place.
Absolutely.
And so that's how I go about most of my training is emotion first.
So how did you get involved with wanting to be like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna become a dog trainer, I'm gonna have people hire me, pay me money, and I need to be able to execute this in the right way.
So really,
in a way that people that don't have your level of like mental with your level of psychology with a dog, like an everyday person, how could you communicate that to an everyday person? When does that come into play?
So I think, so I had lost my job, decided to come back, and I came back and was like, so I was at a fork in the road really, because every state has their own education teacher policies. And so I had taken all the exams in New York, I'd passed them, blah, 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 blah. I'd done all the things I need to do for New York. If I wanted to teach in Pennsylvania,
I had to do it all over.
I had to do it all over again. So I was like the master's degree follows me. That's not the problem. The problem is getting the certificates.
Yeah, all the regulations and everything.
Exactly.
Hoops to jump through.
I sat down and I was like, is that really what I want to do? Or is the world telling me maybe that's not what you're supposed to do? Because it was twice, right? I couldn't find a job out of my master's program because of the recession, and then lost my job because of funding from the recession. So I was like, okay, I think the world is trying to tell me that teaching is not necessarily what I was meant to do.
Yeah.
So I decided like my other good skill set is I'm good with dogs, and I've worked through
and you enjoy it. You would have to enjoy it.
And the thing that makes it a little bit different for me as a trainer is that I also like working with people. I like teaching people. That's something I'm good at, and I'm able to break down pretty, somewhat dense. It's not super hard sciencey stuff, but it is hard sciencey stuff to a bit, that I'm able to break that down and give good analogies and good metaphors to help people understand.
Absolutely.
This like big constant, like dense content. Can I get you to get that in a palatable, easily digestible way? And that's something I am good at, in part because of my background in education. So
I didn't even think about that. It all kind of blended together well.
It is. So, I mean, my dad used to make fun of me about, I sent you to college and you have this master's degree in education. All you do is teach dogs. I'm like, yeah, I do. I understand the learning theory because of psychology, and that's how dogs learn. I understand human education. How do I teach humans? How do I get my information across clearly? How do I structure a class? How do I structure that curriculum?
That's all part of your education.
Exactly. So it worked out perfectly, really. So when I got back here, I decided to do that. I still had friends in the dog world here. I'd actually started many, many years ago, a Frisbee disc dog club.
Disc dog club. So Ian's would go play with Frisbees.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my dogs will do backflips off of me. It was super cool.
Wow.
Yeah. We used to do really, really fun stuff. And so I had that club going. So I had some, my hands still in the dog community back here.
Yeah.
It fell apart when I moved, but that's okay. And so when I moved back here, I reached out to one of the people who was a trainer out here. And I said, hey, look, I'm back in town. I'm looking to get into training on a more professional level. And so,
do you have to have regulations and things?
Fun story. No. So there's a meme going around right now on Facebook that's like, I trained my dog to sit. I am now a professional dog trainer. Because it's true. There's absolutely no regulation. So you could call yourself a dog trainer tomorrow and be like, I'm going to charge everybody money, even though I have trained my puppy for 6 months. At best, right? And you could do that, and there's absolutely no regulation. That's one of the challenging pieces. Is that
I didn't know that there was no like certificates or any like
no certificates. No, I mean there are schools to learn how to be a trainer.
Yeah, but there's no minimum that you have to have.
Absolutely not, and there's no ethics standards. So I have, so I'm a certified professional dog trainer. I am a certified behavior consultant. And so with those certifications and those memberships with those organizations, I'm required to follow a particular standard of ethics with regards to my treatment of dogs and my treatment of humans.
Yes.
And my professional, my business.
Yeah.
And so I have to meet those ethical standards. If people aren't certified, they don't have to meet those professional standards of ethics. So you have trainers that have no insurance, which puts the pet owner at risk.
Yeah.
That you have trainers that aren't bound by ethical standards and approach to dog training, where they are not just, putting aversive equipment on, 8, 9, 10-week-old puppies.
What does that mean? Like the shock collars?
Shock collars, prong collars, that, they put these on little bitty babies that have been on this planet for less than 100 days.
Now, have you always came to this as positive reinforcement training?
No, I mean, when I first started training, when I was a kid, that's not the type of training we had. We used some cookies, but it was not the approach I take now.
Yeah.
And so my background isn't in strictly positive reinforcement. I came to that when I realized, my problem child dog, she would have taken corrections and would not have made a big difference. There's a high likelihood that when I first got her, she would have come back at me with corrections.
Yeah.
It would not have worked out well for that dog. And I didn't want that adversarial, approach to it.
Yeah.
In part because, again, I want emotions. Emotions drive behaviors. If I have good emotions, the behaviors tend to be in line with what I want, and they're easier to change.
Absolutely.
So, so I kind of came at it not from a positive reinforcement place initially, but that's just what it was when I was a kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
But having worked through a dog with the framework of good emotions first, and the behavior will fall into place, I saw how effective that was, and how it didn't have the fallout. So using punishment, and it's not that I don't use punishment, because I do. It's not painful and not discomforting to the dog. So if physical punishment is working, it's because the dog finds it uncomfortable or it hurts.
Yeah.
people who say, well, it's just a tickle or whatever. If it were just a tickle, it would not work. So if the punishment is working, it is uncomfortable or painful enough that the dog wants to avoid it.
I put a shock collar on in high school at the lowest,
It doesn't feel good, does it?
It fucking hurts. Like that there's no way that it does not hurt a dog.
Yeah.
Especially that I knew it was coming, and then the dog, this is just something that you're strapping onto your dog, and because they're barking, like they don't know what the hell is going on and why they're getting shocked like this.
Yeah, and there's some dogs that can handle the punishment and they don't have what we call behavioral fallout. But there are lots of dogs that don't.
Behavioral fallout is like a reaction almost?
Yeah, so I mean, I've worked with a lot of dogs that have come to me from using various types of prong collar, e-collar type of equipment.
Yeah.
And they now have other problems because of that use.
Yeah.
And, it can be effective. Like
100%.
It works.
As someone who just got a dog and who has been, looking into it all, I've looked at both ends of it all, and there is there's a lot of proof that it works in the beginning. There's a guy that's on Netflix right now called Canine, whatever it's called.
I haven't seen it, but I have heard.
I mean, like I get it that it's like not the same type of thing that you do, but you could definitely tell that what he's doing. I mean, obviously this is all like the spark notes of all the most successful stories, but there's definitely proof. Like there's reactive dogs to people that would go lose their mind if someone came inside, but a few weeks later, they're fine. But it's like, I don't know, like I don't see him using prong collars. I see him using training collars and a box, and like it's interesting to see his methods. I don't really see him doing any sort of like crazy punishment. The most he does is a tug on a leash. Mm-hmm. But the way that he was explaining it makes it understandable for me, because like, people were like, oh yeah, if you put a harness on a young dog, that allows them to pull and not be uncomfortable. But if you have a training collar on there, you could correct them. And like, I understand that method and I understand the logic behind it. It's still not what I want to do because they're young dogs. And like, I don't know. It's hard because there's so much to do and so much to take in with it all.
And so for me, there is, I think I'm always thoughtful about behavioral fallout when I'm in it, regardless of what punishment I'm using with dogs. So, and again, there are definite consequences for the dogs I live with. I live with 4 dogs that are all worky, not high drive Malinois, but they are dogs that work. They are dogs that love to work. They are dogs that need to work. And so we've got structure and rules for them.
Do they all get along?
Yeah, they're great. But they are, I'm always aware of when I decide to use any sort of punishment, I'm thinking about fallout. What is a potential fallout for this? So my dog is being a dummy and I decide to close access to what they wanted, whatever. There's not likely to be a lot of behavioral fallout to that. I think for me, when people are using aversive equipment like prong collars, shock collars, I think a lot of times that, especially the TV shows, you don't see what's actually going on.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
We have no idea.
That's all the glorified.
Right. You have no idea what's going on really, but they don't show the behavioral fallout that happens later. And that's the piece of the puzzle that, with positive training, and there, again, because it's not regulated, there are positive trainers that are not good trainers. Yeah. They're ineffective. They're not able to get behavioral change. And, so the dog owner will go elsewhere because they're not getting the behavior change they need, which is fine. Yeah. At the very least, I have not seen dogs that, or at least I have not encountered dogs from other positive trainers that have been worse than what they started in terms of more aggressive, bad, or like a worse level of bite. Okay. I haven't seen that. What I have seen are dogs that are just more out of control, more wild. They didn't get what they need to do. Yeah. Right. So I think when things go bad with positive training, I don't typically see it get as bad. Yeah. Some of the most dangerous dogs I've worked with have been dogs who have been on e-collars and prong collars because they've had the warning punished out of them. So the dogs don't warn you before they're about to nail you. Yeah. Because the dogs know if I growl or lunge, then I get, a correction. And so it looks like the dog is getting better until the dog doesn't.
Yeah, until it doesn't.
And not all the dogs, it doesn't happen to all the dogs that have those tools on them. And that's...
But them couple severe ones could be very, very...
Yeah, and so I think sometimes with that behavioral fallout we get, and the punishment for fallout for punishment, there it is, we can get dogs that are worse than what we started with.
Yeah.
More anxious, more, stressed because, again, it could be also who applied that. So just
Absolutely.
as much as we have positive trainers that are not good trainers or skilled trainers, we have punishment-based trainers that are just the same thing. They're not good at what they do, and so they're causing bigger issues than a trainer who has a more thoughtful approach to how they utilize punishment versus let's just put correction collars on all the dogs and or send them to their place for 20 hours of the day, because if the dog's on place they cannot be biting people. And so I think there is this whole big spectrum on either end. We've got trainers that are inappropriate or ineffective, I think. And it is a rocky world to be in, and it's a rocky world for, I think, consumers to navigate.
Oh yeah,
because of that.
It is. It's overwhelming. It's very overwhelming because everyone shows all the success of it all. You don't see any of the negative of it. So obviously, that's. You're like, oh my God, look at this right here. Look at this, this highlighted case of but you don't see the 6 other ones that might have problems like that. Mm-hmm. I'm curious. So you start to do this training and things like that. I feel like that you could go down either 2 paths. You can go down paths of, doing the elementary type training and stuff like that, but you also offer the behavioral. And I feel like that's such like a difficult branch of dog training that you have to be a certain level of understanding, that because you're dealing with these some of them are mental cases that you have to try.
Humans?
Yeah,
sometimes.
But both of them, and that you have to figure it out. So you could have went the easy way and just been like, oh, I'll teach your dog to sit, lay down, not counter surf. But you do offer dogs that are super aggressive and things like that. I'm curious, just before I forget, how many times do you think you've been bit in your life?
None while I was working. That was a knock on wood.
I expected you to either say, more times than I could count, or none.
Yeah, none. Because I'm cautious and I'm thoughtful and I don't push buttons. So here, the thing about positive reinforcement trainers and why I think it's hard for those of us who are doing that job to get a lot of, a bajillion followers on social media. Good behavior change is boring. Yeah. It is boring to watch, right? So I've got a couple dogs. I shared a video a couple weeks ago on my Facebook of a dog that has several, I think that dog has a couple bites in its history. No, that wasn't on Facebook. I lied. Different dog. So I was working with the dog the other day that had a couple bites on its record, 2 dogs. Yeah. And I had my dog set up, and it was 45 minutes of the dog looking at my dog and not reacting, and then walking around and not reacting, and then my dog walking around and not reacting. It was very boring. It's like watching paint dry. Yeah. But what we're seeing is that we have a dog who is learning to make different decisions around dogs, and to say, oh, that dog is moving, I don't have to freak out at it. Yeah. And so I think we don't have those big shows of this is what the dog barking, lunging, fighting, because none of us will put a dog in that situation, because what I know about behavior is that the more a behavior is practiced, the better they get at that behavior. So if I'm setting my dog up to fail and they're reacting just so I can correct them for reacting, my dog is practicing do the bad thing. Yeah. And so they're even though the correction is coming afterwards, that's still part of the sequence that happens in their brain. Is they see the dog, instantly respond emotionally, then respond behaviorally, then get a correction. Oh, wow. Right. And so we're building the sequence in, and what I try to, my goal is that I try to say, you can see a dog and not actually react. Did you know this, Fido, that it is totally possible for you to see that dog, to not have a big emotional display at that dog, and then not react. And you can get out of the situation just as, safely as you did if you acted like an idiot. Yeah. And so, it's boring to watch for most people because it's slow, not slow. It's
uneventful.
Progressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's progressive. We work at this distance, and then this distance. And then in this situation, it's not throw them in the deep end and hope they swim.
Yeah.
It's let's just walk you in slowly and make sure you're successful. And, we ultimately get dogs that, they respond beautifully, that they see the dog and they go, okay, Mom, there's a dog there.
So how, like when you started this, like when you started your own business, how long ago was that?
11 years, I think.
So
11.
When you started this, I assume you didn't have the training center?
No. So I was, so I'd gotten an interview with the person who ran the training at the Humane Society on Western Avenue.
Yeah.
And so they were looking for trainers, and with my background in both education and my background with dogs and the fabulous referral from a friend of mine who was teaching there, I shadowed 2 trainers just to kind of get the lay of the land on how they do things. And I was able to start classes there and work for them as an independent contractor.
Now, so it's so interesting to think about like the way you build because whenever I was like coming through you and like I saw, oh yeah, you need to get a consultation. So I was like, this is what I want. That's what I wanted, was a consultation before anything, because that gave me the thought that like you want to assess the situation in a way rather than just saying like, oh, like let's just start these lessons, because, if we just come in the first lesson, it's going to take a half hour for them to get used to you and things like that. That's just like neither here nor there, but it's like the consultation I felt was such like a valuable part of everything, because from the moment we went in there, I felt like that you were just so, you were paying attention to everything. Like you had 2 different piles of toys set up. Mm-hmm. You and I could tell that you were like, observing. Yeah, mm-hmm. Very observant. Us, the dog, and everything. And I felt like everything I felt about your session was very, very. It gave me a very good peace of mind, because I felt like that, we were being thorough and we were doing it the right way. So, full circle, what was your approach in the beginning whenever you started to where you are now? Like, were you very, very unsure? Were you like nervous? Like, did you have a different sort of like layout of a program?
So I want to, before I kind of get the history. So the way I approach things is not for everybody, in the sense of some of my clients are like, I want to do the things now.
Yeah.
And, that's just not how it works for me. Again, because my background as an educator, I want my students to know why we're doing things.
Yeah.
Why we're approaching it this way, because I think there is so much value in, teaching a man to fish versus giving them fish.
100%. And that's what I felt that you did. Like, I felt your process was, the main consultation was to be able to communicate it to us thoroughly and in a way that's snackable, that we could digest. Like you were saying, this is such like a long, dense, process and everything. And I know that it's difficult to communicate it to, civilians like us, but I felt that you did such a good job at that, to be able to use your analogies and your references and, different ways to do that. And I really felt that it was like a positive experience through it all.
Well, that's fabulous, because that's what I hope for, because I do think it makes a difference. And one of my favorite compliments are from clients who email me years after I've seen them, and they said, hey, I wanted to check in with you about something. This is what happened. Fido did something, and, we did this as a result. Was that good? And I'm like, yes, you did it perfectly. That's exactly what I would have done.
Yeah.
And, I had a veterinarian, so I have quite a few veterinary clients of mine, and I have quite a few veterinarian people who refer to me. And I had a vet email me after one of my clients went to an appointment for them, and they're like, "We're so proud of that dog. The owners were so good with him, and they were, they set the dog up to be really successful at this vet visit." And I'm like, "This is perfect. I want my human clients to be better dog trainers, and I want them to be able to make decisions for their dog without having to call me and ask.
Yeah.
Yes, just do that. You're fine.
Yes.
I one of my clients themselves, they were out. I don't remember where they were. They may have been at the vet too. And one of the vet tech or vet staff were like, "Are you a professional trainer?" And I'm like, that is the best compliment I could ever get, is that my students are being asked if they're professional trainers, because they're that good. They're good with their mechanics. They're good with setting their dog up to be successful. They have the information to make good decisions. And that's what I want. Again, human educator. That's part of what fuels me.
Yeah.
But in terms of how I've gotten here, I'm not sure it has. So my confidence has absolutely gone up, and that's just with
naturally.
Yeah, with practicing and doing things. So I was always good teaching classes. That was never a problem for me, because teacher, like, that's what I did. And my curriculum for classes changes all the time. If you're not changing stuff, I think you are not growing.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be stagnant. So I'm always changing things, always, improving, hopefully, trial and erroring, see what works better, and changing things as I go. In terms of like my consultations, they've gotten more in depth. So they used to be an hour, then it was an hour and a half, and now we're stuck at 2 hours. Because although I have gotten more concise with learning what questions to ask to get all of the information I want out of more tightly narrowed questions, there's still so much information I want to make sure people have, because it does make a really big difference. When I send people home from their consult with whatever activities they're doing, my expectation is that when next time I see them, they have made pretty good progress. They're not good, but they have made progress in a way that they hadn't previously.
Absolutely.
And it's just simple stuff mostly. And that's...
Well, what I liked about it most is that, I watch all these things like whenever we got the dog, from a week beforehand to whenever we got her. We stopped watching, our shows, everything like that. And it was just all YouTube videos on what to do with dogs. And there's so many of them, and there's so many goofy, funny trainers. I gravitated towards this Zach George guy. And
Zach George.
I was like, this guy. I almost watched it because it was almost like a sitcom-y, type of thing. But, what I liked is I want to be able to ask the questions. I don't want to have to just have a bunch of information and sift through it and pull out, these things. I want to be able to ask questions. And with this consultation, I loved being able to, I felt that it was valuable that it was 2 hours, because it took some of the pressure off of us to try to put everything that we're thinking into words in such a short amount of time. And I think that your, template of questions and your tight, that obviously came over time. You developed the questions that you want to know and that you need to know to be able to be effective. And for us, that gave us some time to really think through them and be able to try to explain it. And it just felt very, I don't know, personal. Everything felt very personal, and it felt like that you were really trying to go as deep as you can into the situation that we are, because I'm sure everyone has different, experiences with their dog. Their dogs are different, different mannered dogs. So, for you to be able to adapt all this, you have to have this skill that you could kind of pull out one piece and put another one in to know how to do it. But I think you did a good job at being able to, understand in that amount of time. I mean, you're learning about a life in 2 hours as much as you can. And I thought it was interesting, but just the information that you gave us, because our main gripe was Nadja was just mouthy, crazy mouthy. And, I think that, the main thing you said was we need to have a schedule of naps and everything like that. And before, she was a lunatic in the crate. You would put her in there and she would cry for 40 minutes. Now you put her in there, she looks like she's dead, because she just sleeps in there.
Tired.
Yeah. But she is, that was my biggest surprise. You were like, well, it's not really necessarily physically, she doesn't need to be, you don't need to run her to death, because that's not the whole part of the thing. It was just nice to be able to ask questions and elaborate on certain things that we were curious about.
It is. I think one of my favorite things with consults, and again, it's the way I do it is not the way for everybody, either in terms of human instructors, so other trainers, or in terms of human learners, right?
Yeah.
Like there are people that really hate the consult, but the vast majority of people, like they didn't realize they needed it until they got it.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh my God, I didn't understand. So I get told all the time, I didn't understand why I had to sit here for 2 hours and listen to you talk. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, at the end of it, like, yeah, I understand. I get it now. And it really is learning for you guys. One of my favorite pieces that happens a lot is that we'll go through information and I'll give you information, and then the dog owners, they come to their own conclusion. So without me having to tell you, hey, maybe it's not the best idea that you're doing X, Y, or Z. If I give you the information, I get owners that will come, after I've said something right at the end, they're like, so, based on that, I guess that's why, when I'm doing this, it's causing problems.
Yeah.
Like when I give them the information, they come to their own conclusions.
Yeah,
and I don't
tools
have
for
to
the
tell
toolbox.
you. Yeah. I don't have to tell them, don't do this. Because I like my learners to get there and to kind of come at it from their own place. Because I think we avoid a little bit of dissonance where cognitive dissonance, where we're coming up against, I know this, and then this person is telling me that that's wrong. I try not to go that route because I think it's problematic.
Yeah.
I try to say, regardless, this person knows this, that's in their own, their own learning history. I say, well, this is information I know.
Yeah.
And based on what we're seeing with your dog's behavior, we're going with some information. The owners tend to come to, oh, so every time that, I'm seeing my dog get worse with this because I'm doing X, which I thought was the right thing to do. But based on the information that you just said, that's not correct. And so they come to their own conclusion.
Absolutely.
Which helps avoid like this dissonance about, I don't want to change. I'm not wrong. I never come at it as you're wrong. It's, this is the information
you're building
have.
bridges for people, like to different steps. Like you're putting stepping stones for people to be able to get further.
Yeah, I try. Because I think that's how we get change, is not saying you're wrong. It's, this is information I have, and this is the behavior we see with your dog.
Yeah. I also think that you do, like how you were saying, give a man a fish, teach a man to fish. It's like, that is really, what I felt the most valuable, because me and Antoinette were like, it wasn't really about like training Nadja. It was training us on how to respond the correct way and how to, do the right things to be able to, successfully like get her to set her up for success. Everything is about setting, her up for success to do it, because, at first, as she's like being bitey and everything, he's just laying
with the nylabone.
Yeah.
Nadja.
But it's like, it's so interesting because, Nadja, it's like in the beginning, whenever she would be super mouthy, we did everything. We tried everything. I tried, just switching to a toy. I tried, trying to give her like a bark. I tried to bark at her, to try to show dominance. And then when she's biting me and not stopping, I bit her in the scruff, just gave her a little bite, because I'm reading all these things and I'm like, what the hell is going to be right? Because my brother, he has not a crazy pit bull. He's just like, he's a rescue.
A wound up guy.
Not even wound up. He's just like very, he's so sweet, but my brother had a Cairn Terrier, and at the end there, he was older, but he was the boss of the house. So my brother marries a great girl who had a medium-sized pit bull that was like, had a lot of high energy, and she had like a prey drive. Mm-hmm. You couldn't let her go because she would go after dogs. Mm-hmm. And then they adopted this dog that he's probably 100 pounds, and he's just like a thick pit, and he looks terrifying. And my parents were the types of people that were like never getting a pit bull ever, like they're terrible dogs. But this guy is such a slug, but he ended up biting the small dog a couple times. And just because, he had that like prison mentality of being in a shelter. He was from Alabama. He was, in there for a while. And like the small dog, he would just wander around like a Roomba looking for snacks, because he ended up being blind. mind. But the small dog just went under the pit bull and got bit in the scruff. But like my brother, you know, like he bit him in the scruff and like, you know, and I'm trying everything because I just want it to work out the way it is. But as, you know, as time, you know, pushes on, it's like, I don't know. I had different tools from just the consultation that you gave us that we're implementing. And like, I'm seeing changes, like just with Nadja growing and like being less like nervous about being here. And it's like, I keep telling myself like, oh, it's like, we've only had this dog for a couple months. So like, you know, we're new and like everything is so new. And, you know, at first I'm like, oh my God, she doesn't pay attention to me whenever I'm saying anything. And like, we come to your consultation, she's like, she's a baby. Like, what do you expect? And it's just nice to be able to know that it's okay for it to be that way for now.
And I think, you know, there's, you know, when we talk about, you know, the different approaches you took to trying to get her to be less mouthy, when we were not addressing her needs, it wasn't working.
Yeah.
Right? What were her needs in that moment? I need a freaking nap.
Yeah, that's it.
And so that's generally when, you know, when I'm working with dogs, that base need, what is driving this mouthiness? That's what I go after.
How much is that a norm along with puppies? Is like of people thinking that they need,
all the time.
That people think that puppies need to be exercised a crazy amount. But it blew our mind whenever you told us that. And at first we were like, you're telling me that like if the dog is acting insane, very, very, you know, just energetic, let her sleep more. And at first we were like, you're just gonna let her charge back up so she comes after it. It is the opposite.
No, because they're rested.
They're rested.
Yeah.
And it was mind blowing. And it's like you get these answers watching things online, but you get it in such like a spread out version. You know, I like to be able to like, you know, that's where the whole like asking questions and everything comes back into play. It was all right to hear someone, you know, say that's all right that this is happening, you know, try this, you know.
Right. I think that, you know, where the consultation for me becomes really helpful is that I can tell you the need of that biting and mouthing a heck of a lot easier when I have all that information, when I see that your puppy doesn't sleep a whole lot.
Yeah.
Right. Your puppy is only sleeping 10, maybe 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
Then I'm pretty confident that napping is part of our problem, right? If your puppy's getting 16, 17, 18 hours of sleep a day and they're wild and crazy, and I see that you're not exercising your dog, then that might be my solution. But I can't give you the right answer for my puppies being bitey in a holistic way that'll actually address the cause of the bitiness.
Yeah. Besides
just being a puppy and putting things in their mouth. I can't do that if I don't have a lot of information, or at least from my process. I can't do that without some good information to tell me, is this under exercise? Is this too tired? Is this dog that isn't having their chewing needs met?
Yeah.
And so when I have that information, I can say very clearly and confidently, Nadja just needs naps. And naps for Nadja was the right answer. It might not be the answer for a dog that is napping or sleeping 16, 17 hours a day, but what's driving that behavior is different.
Yeah.
And so we can address what the base problem is. Like,
are you ever lost on a dog? Like, do you ever feel like that it's like not hopeless, but like that you feel that you don't know the answer?
Yeah. So I think that's always a case. If you are a professional and you think that you know it all, you do not.
Yeah.
So there are dogs that it tends to be dogs that are really complex.
Yeah.
That dogs have this issue and this issue and this issue, but they're all like counter
they all
productive.
Like, yeah.
So I have a dog that is resource guarding and also has, you know, a bite history with people, not with context to resource guarding. So one of the things I'd like to be able to do with that dog is work on muzzle training. But that dog will resource guard its muzzle.
Yeah.
And so now when we're trying to do muzzle training, we're getting a dog that's resource guarding and I'm like, crap. So then I talked to some colleagues and figure out, okay, I need a different way to work on teaching this dog to wear a muzzle besides having the muzzle in my hand and the dog putting their muzzle in, because they're having instances of being a resource guarding the muzzle, even though it's in my hand and it's in my possession, they're guarding it. So we went about it differently, and we ended up attaching the muzzle, initially attaching the muzzle to a crate And so the dog learned to shove its face in the muzzle while the muzzle was attached to the crate.
Wow.
So we had to problem solve that. And there, so there are situations where I'm definitely like,
overwhelmed, would you say?
I don't think overwhelmed. I think it is just like a
whole new problem to figure out.
It's a new complex series. So again, like every dog is a little bit different and
not necessarily a problem, but a puzzle almost.
Yeah, it is. And sometimes that puzzle, like the way I would like to approach it either isn't working or can't work because of some other issue.
Yeah.
And so we're having to do some problem solving. I actually like those dogs a lot because they're pushing me to learn and pushing me to do more and not just get complacent with the same old thing.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that is, I think, super unique and special about really good positive trainers is that we think out of the box a lot.
Yeah.
And
you have to, because it's like, I can't just shock them. I got to think of a different way to make this work.
Yeah. One of my colleagues, she came from using choke chains and prong collars and absolutely no food at all. And she said it was easy.
What do you mean no food?
They don't, no treats or anything.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Shockingly, you have to feed your dog.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So, but what she said is it was so much easier then. Right? It was so much easier to treat every dog the exact same, put the same equipment on the dog, do the same things, and make the dog do the thing. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Sometimes you had behavioral fallout.
Yeah.
But it was easier that way. A lot of the positive trainers are really creative, and we come about things differently, and we think about things, in problem solving ways. So I've got dogs that have struggled with lie down. Right, in classes. And, I can think off the top of my head 6 or 7 different ways to teach a lie down.
Yeah.
Right. And that's something that I came to over time. I didn't know 6 or 7 ways when I started. It was, okay, that's not working for this dog. What else could I possibly do? And because of my understanding of behavior and my understanding of training and how that works, and how, how we can alter an environment to help get what we need, I can come up with new ways to teach a dog to lie down.
Yeah.
And that's cool. So it's a very creative way. So when I have those dogs that are like not cookie cutter, my dog is reactive. I do not need to see your dog be reactive. I work with thousands of you all the stinking time. I don't need to see it. But when I have a dog that isn't just this reactive dog, I get to really kind of flex my muscles and kind of think about, all right.
Yeah, that's interesting because every dog is different. So you every time you figure out a way to adapt to that dog, that's like another tool that you have in your toolbox.
Absolutely, it is. And it's really kind of nice. So, I have my run-of-the-mill reactive dogs that are all, we cater it differently because what is the motivation for the reactivity? Is it fear? Is it arousal? Is it frustration? Is it a little bit of both?
Yeah.
So we alter it based on the particular dog and the needs of the owner and whatever it is. So everything is specific to them. But when I have a dog that I can't just kind of pull from this and pull from this and pull from this to create a plan, I have to actually come up with something new. It's challenging, but I don't want to say fun, but it is fun. Like it's a nice puzzle for me to work on to come up with something that'll work for that particular dog. And I think that creativity is something that we see a lot with good, qualified, positive trainers, is that we're not just doing the same thing over and over again and putting the same things on every single dog. We're really thoughtful about, okay, picking and choosing and finding what works for this particular dog to make it successful and least frustrating and encourage the best relationship between owner and dog.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there people out there that some businesses, they have to go to classes and update their things? Like, is there people out there that are teaching like updated training methods that you go to and that you to further your education on it all?
Yeah. So part of we talked earlier about the certifications and the memberships to different organizations that require me to have standard of ethics and a code of ethics. They also have continuing education requirements, which is why I think it's, important to have certifications available, is that they're not forcing you. Because at the end of the year, minus 2020, when I look at my certifications, I have to get 30 credits in continuing education for one of my organizations, 21 for another one over the course of 2 or 3 years, something like that. And when I go and look at my credits, it's normally like I have 140 credits or something like that, because I'm always learning. I'm taking classes. I'm going to seminars. I'm doing this.
You as a person I
want to know.
Yeah.
I like to know. I'm a scientist at heart. I like science. I like learning. I like kind of challenging myself with information. And, you know,
plus it benefits, you know, this is something that you enjoy, and then it benefits your business because it's going to make it easier on you. The more you know, the more well-versed you are on this language of dog training and understanding, you know, dogs. It's just going to make your experience probably better and more rewarding and easier to figure out the complex problems.
Yeah. And that's a really big piece of it, is that, you know, the more I'm learning, the more I'm able to do these things. And, you know, I never feel forced to do those continuing ed stuff. I do it regardless. Again, well beyond what I need. I'm still paying money to learn more.
Yeah.
But that piece of certification wise is why I think it is so important, is that things are always getting better and there's always new stuff. And when trainers who are, you know, may or may not be as skilled or qualified or experienced, when they are insistent that they know everything and they're not trying to learn more, it's like, that's not how stuff works. Like, things are always improving. You're always learning.
Yeah,
you're always
life is
changing.
progressing. Everything changes in life.
And so there are a lot of people that are, you know, other trainers around here that I've never seen at a conference, and I've gone to or seen on like a webinar or things like that.
Yeah.
And I've certainly taken webinars from trainers who utilize tools that I don't utilize, because I think there's some trainers that I do. I think they utilize those tools in ways that are least likely to cause fallout. And those trainers have really interesting ideas on how they use reinforcement.
Yeah.
And so I learn from those. And, you know,
even if you don't agree with everything, you could still gain some knowledge from that.
Totally. And so there are webinars I've done with a couple different trainers that utilize tools that I personally haven't found the need to use.
Yeah.
But they also emphasize reinforcement and positive reinforcement. And that's a big part of what they do. So although in some situations they will use a tool that I haven't found the need to, I still can learn a lot from them. But there's some trainers around here that I've never seen on any of those like webinars or other continuing education programs. And it's like, I don't know it all. There's a lot of stuff I don't know. And I'm always trying to learn and kind of get new skills and improve what I'm doing, because I know I can always get better.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's why my curriculum for classes changes all the time. And my poor employees, I change it. And I'm always experimenting. What if I put this instead of this? And how does that work? And does that get better results? And is that helping the dogs better? We just play around to get things as good as we can get and then change it again. Yeah. Like, it's really great. Things are going fabulous.
When did the training center come into play?
So I have 3 years ago, 3 or 4.
And how did you decide? I mean, your business just progressed and you were like, I need a place to do this.
Yeah, I think I had gotten, you know, I was busy out the wazoo, and part of it was that I was working at, I did not feel where I was currently working, I was getting paid what I deserved to be paid based on my experience and what I was able to offer them.
Yeah.
And they weren't able to meet what I felt would be a more appropriate pay scale.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, we're going to look for my own space because I have the clientele to use it. I don't, you know, I can go out and I know I'll have classes that'll fill and whatnot. So it was basically that. And initially I was over in Coriopolis. And again, life just likes to throw me lots of lemons. And after I was there for a year, the owner of the building decided they were moving their company back into that space.
Oh, really?
And so I had to vacate and find another space. Jeez. And finding a space that is, you know, I was looking at around 2,000 or 3,000 square feet. I ultimately got 4,000+. But finding that type of space with reasonable rent rates, because again, I'm not a retail store that's open all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I don't pull in anyway. So I had to go about searching and trying to find another location because I liked having a training center. I liked teaching classes for myself. It worked really well.
Plus, you have a home base. Like it's
really nice to have a home base and kind of have that spot
that you're comfortable in, that you could, you know, adapt your courses to and everything like that, rather than just like being a guest in someone else's space. Right. That's completely understandable. I thought that the training center that you have I was impressed by it all because it's like, you know, you can do a lot there.
Yeah, it was a big stress for quite some time finding it.
Yeah.
And then they did a complete reno to get it set the way I wanted it to. So I pretty much designed how that was laid out.
Yeah.
Based on what I felt like my needs were going to be. And it was stressful, but man, it is pretty much perfect. And especially with the last, 2020, when I couldn't do in-homes, or rather I have made the decision not to do in-homes.
Yeah.
Having a location that people could come to and do all their training was an absolute lifesaver.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it wasn't a situation where I felt safe going into people's homes. One, from my standpoint, but also theirs. Like if I'm in and out of people's homes, I'm potentially carrying whatever is on me into your home.
100%.
And I didn't really want to do that. Lots of people were still like, come to the house. I'm like, I don't want to kill grandma.
Yeah.
So
absolutely,
you can come to me where I've got 4,000 square feet and we can be 30 feet apart.
It's more than enough room. Like whenever we went in there, like we were probably 25 foot away from each other.
Yeah. Easy.
And it's just like, you still had the ability to do what you needed to do in a safe and effective way.
Yeah.
And I saw like, going on there, like you definitely stay busy. Like all your classes are full. Like it got to be overwhelming almost.
It is. I mean, I'm hiring finished training. So I have two people one who's already certified, the other one who should be taking her test and should be passing.
What does that certification consist of? What do you have to do?
So there are two different certifications. The primary one is a certified professional dog trainer knowledge assessed, which is CPDTKA. Other letters, the alphabet soup afterwards.
Yeah.
That one is just a test. So that, for me, in my opinion, that should be the bare minimum a trainer should know before they start.
A written test.
It is a written test.
Okay.
Of business ethics, dog ethology, learning theory, not business ethics, but business procedures.
Yeah.
Like classroom skills.
Yeah.
I feel like there's one other that I'm forgetting, but it covers a lot of basic topics that you should know before you start.
Yeah, like the foundation of it.
Yeah, before you're a professional dog trainer.
Yeah.
And you have to have 500, I want to say I think it's 500 hours or 375 hours of practical work as well. So you've been teaching classes for 500 hours and then you pass this test.
Yeah.
And you have to certify that you or your employer carry business standard insurance. Mm-hmm. And so that's part of it. So it's not that it's not hard, because it is information you have to learn. You have to, most people will study for it.
Yeah.
But it's not like you're jumping through hoops to get the certification.
Yeah. It's not like a huge, reach for it all. It's just if you could read and learn some things. Yeah.
I mean, and it is, in my opinion, base knowledge that trainers should have.
Yeah.
In order to teach. And so for my business, I've made the decision that I'm not hiring anybody as a lead instructor who is not certified.
Okay.
And that's just where I sat with that as an educator, as a trainer. I want to lift the standards.
That's understandable.
Our community gets in terms of trainers, that
Absolutely.
You're going to learn from someone who actually knows what they're supposed to know in terms of behaviors of dogs and the history of dogs, and very, very, very minor, not medical, but what are worms, and about contagious diseases that might happen in a setting like a training center, that they have all that information before they
Bordetella that I never learned about until the other day.
Yes. So I mean, it's a written test. I think it's 280 questions or something like that.
So it's like it is a
lengthy test. It is much like an SAT type of thing.
I mean, as a business owner, I feel like it's a smart move for you to do, because you're setting yourself up for success. I mean, like if you're just bringing anyone in, you're setting a standard. Like, I want you to, really take this seriously, and this is going to be, like I've expectations, and we want you to, it's almost like you're obligating. It's not you're obligating, but you're weeding out the people that just want to do the bare minimum. You want people to elevate themselves and be able to, be an equal to you, rather than just someone who just knows the bare minimum of it all. And that's completely understandable to do.
Yeah. And that's what I wanted. 'Cause I mean, I want I want trainers who find as much passion in learning as I do, and who find as much value in learning, and not just, being stagnant with what they know.
Not just, I know everything already.
Right. And because I don't.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I don't know any really good trainers that say they know it all.
Yeah.
Because anybody who says that, or say they're perfect, or they never make mistakes, I make mistakes all the time.
What's that the guy's name? Caesar?
Yeah, right? So I came into this saying, like, well, there's one thing we're not going to talk about, and it's Caesar Milan. Yeah, that was it. That was my only, boundary.
It's so interesting because that's like what people see on TV. So everyone sees all the success of just that.
They don't see the other side of it.
Yeah.
Or this side that it doesn't last for all the dogs, and in part because the owners can't do the things all the time. But anyway.
Yeah. What's the second one?
So the certified behavior consultant. This was a beast. This took me I had 90 days to complete it. It is a little bit of like a multiple choice test, partially.
Yeah.
But then it's more like a test where you are defining terms yourself. So in your own words, what does this term mean? And so you're writing all this stuff, and there's multiple case studies you have to do. And then they give you hypotheticals where this is the case, this is a dog. You have to write out your plan for that dog.
Like you mean like, oh, this dog had a bite incident with this person, like XYZ, and how would you handle it?
Yes. Well, so it'd be like 3-year-old dog, history of aggression, can't be walked, lives in the city. So they give you like the parameters.
Okay. Yeah.
And then how would you go about, what would your game plan be for this particular dog? Okay. And they want to make sure that you are, you know how to approach that type of thing, because it's behavior. So behavior consultant would be, working on aggression and working on reactivity and working on fear and working on anxiety-based behaviors.
Yeah.
And so that test, I believe I copied and pasted, I think, what I did for the test. And it was like 65,000 words.
Oh my goodness.
It was a really long exam. And they grade it on a rubric. So it's not like it's not just.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They take their rubric of what you should have done and what you did do. And then they give you feedback. And sometimes you don't pass. And sometimes it's just one little thing like, I had a colleague who she just didn't give quite enough detail. Like, she was on the right track, and they knew she was on the right track. She didn't put as much detail in as she should have.
Okay.
And so they just said, "Look, you're on the right track. We need more detail. So step by step, break it down more." And she was able to redo it, and it was fine. But yeah, it was a daunting task to get that certification. But they want to make sure the thing that a lot of trainers, let me rephrase that. The thing that I, as a trainer, emphasize a lot is management.
Yeah.
Because it is exceptionally hard to change behavior when the dog is in the same environment, in the same conditions.
Yeah.
So I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to stop drinking. I should probably stop going to the bar at night.
Oh,
right?
wow.
Like, we have to manage that environment so you're not in the space and in the situation that caused the unwanted things to happen in the first place.
Yeah, because if you're still in the bar and you're trying to work on, your addiction,
you're going to be done.
Yeah, you're going to keep going back to it because you're set in that environment. Yeah, that
especially
makes sense.
Especially at the beginning, like at the as you've been sober,
the most fragile point in the beginning.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
And so part of my approach is always environmental management of, let's not walk the dog at 5:30 at night. Why do we have to do that when we see 25 dogs on a walk and your dog is losing their crap every time they see the dog? How about we just don't walk that time?
Yeah.
And it's not a long-term solution. It's short-term. So I think of it, management is kind of like a triaging an injury.
Yeah.
Can we just stop the bleeding? Once the bleeding stops,
then we
can go
rest.
about fixing what the problem is, right?
Oh, wow.
And so that's a piece that is part of a behavior consultant. We're supposed to emphasize environmental management as a primary component, because what we know about behavior change is that in order to get it, they just can't keep doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And if we keep them in the same environment, in the same situation, I know they're going to keep doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And so they want to see that you are investing time in management. You are reaching out and referring to veterinarians when it's important. So I work with a lot of cases with veterinarians in the area to help dogs get on the right track and to kind of meet their needs, see if there's a physical reason. I've had some dogs that we're having problems, and I'm like, you know what, this doesn't feel right to me. Go to your veterinarian. Let's do a full workup on stuff. See what the vet wants to do. I'm not a veterinarian. I can't tell you what's wrong with your dog.
Yeah,
but,
but what do you mean though? Like, what kind of problems that you would?
Puppies with UTIs are a big one.
Yeah.
But so I can get dogs that are hurt. Like your dog is. I can see. I see that your dog as they're walking, is limping very specifically on that right hind leg, and in the last 3 months, your dog has become really bitey at people in the house.
Yeah.
And
probably just in pain.
Well, I don't know that because I'm not a vet, but I'm like, let's rule that out.
Yeah.
Let's make sure it's not something that's medical, because if it's medical, I can't fix that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
If a dog is uncomfortable, like that's always going to be that you're not going to be able to do anything mentally to take away that uncomfort.
Right. So we go to the vet and we rule out that maybe we do blood work and we find that we have something wonky in the blood work. And so there's something else going on.
Yeah.
And then we treat that, right? And we see, okay, the medical stuff gets all pulled together. And then what do we have behaviorally? Because sometimes the behavior goes away then.
Yeah.
Because it was very specifically because of the medical thing going on. Sometimes it's not, and it's not that easy to fix. But that's a component of the behavior consultant, is that we refer out to other people when necessary. And you're not just, cookie cuttering everything, and you are taking care of the holistic picture and not just the behavior. It's not just treating the behavior. We're treating the holistic piece of what's going on.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, so that exam was hard. I would not recommend it.
Yeah, that sounds like a beast. Like I couldn't. I didn't have any sort of nothing that I could compare it to or like have an idea of it all, because it's like I see, whenever I looked at your page, I saw these accolades and it's like, I don't know what these are. Like, I don't know what these mean.
You don't need to.
But but to learn what they are and what they mean and how, how deep you have to go into it. It's really, really interesting to hear about like that whole, process of it all.
Yeah. And then not the easy, but the less intensive certification, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
Right. It's not something that I think should be, there is a financial component to that. I mean, it takes, I think it's $400 to take the test or something, which is something that, is a challenge for some trainers. Like, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I didn't get that certification right away. In part, so I'd been teaching for years before I got the certification because of the financial component. It was expensive.
Yeah, $400.
Yeah, it was not, when I didn't have my training center. So I was teaching, for somebody else, which means I get a much smaller paycheck because of that. And so it was just a big investment. And I think twice I was supposed to take it. And then one of my dogs had an ER trip that was like $1,000 in the ER. So I was like, there goes that money. But yeah, I mean, that's not a terribly difficult, it shouldn't be that hard. Like, there are things on there, I certainly didn't get a perfect score, but I got close, that were just, off the wall, but it's not challenging.
It's like the other one is going to be, that's going to like separate the person who wants to do that to who wants to like really,
it's the behavior person versus the training person.
Yeah.
And, there's no like judgment value on that. Like, there are lots of trainers that they don't do behavior stuff, but they do their training stuff awesome.
Absolutely.
And that's fabulous.
Yeah.
We need those people. The behavior component though is challenging. That test was it was not fun.
Yeah, but, like that's definitely a
but it was, what was interesting is that you actually get the feedback base of, so they have other professionals, so people who are in other certified behavior consultants will review that. So they have a whole group of people that review them and score them and whatnot. And they look at the scores and you get a little bit of feedback on what it was.
Rather than just like a score. You get
you get to see your rubric back of this is why you got a 3 instead of 4 in this section.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. So, but it part of it requires really good, you have to have good written communication skills for that, right?
Yeah.
And thankfully the college that I went to is a writing intensive school.
Yeah, so you were able to communicate it through words in a good legible way. Not legible, but
it made sense, and it was structured in a way that worked for them. Yeah. And I made sure I got all the details in that I thought they were going to be looking for. But those are the certifications that I have. I'm also a certified trick dog instructor, which is
that's what I was
not
going to
that
ask you
hard,
about.
but it was fun.
I saw like some of the other like the ribbons that your dogs have and everything, and it's interesting because being a dog owner, I'm like looking at different things to do for her, and I see people are doing scent training, and all this stuff is so fun for me. Like me and Antoinette, if we buy her a new snack, like I started getting her duck hearts, and like things like this, and I've been taking photos of me getting ready to give her any of these, like that ostrich bone. Yeah. I just love like seeing her reaction to it all. And it's like, we start noticing different things about her, and it's like, I can't even imagine a kid and like how crazy that would be to watch them start to communicate to you. But just like the way that her ears move and how she reacts emotionally and how she comes over for a pet, rather than like before she was just, a puppy that's super young that wasn't really interested in us, just interested in her surroundings and everything. But now, she'll come over to us and she wants snuggled, and it's like, it's so cool to see that progress over time. And like I said before, we were so overwhelmed. We were like, we didn't know if this dog was just nuts, like Nadja growled at Antoinette a few times, but that's just the way she is now. Like if she is asleep, like last night I was watching a UFC fight and it didn't end until 1 a.m. I had to get Nadja upstairs to the bed. If you try to wake her up, she'll growl at you a little bit. She don't I could put my hand in her mouth and she'll still leave a growl. And it's not like a mean growl. It's just like, I'm sleeping here. Yeah, I'm sleeping here. But it's like, come on, we got to go upstairs. But before, whenever we started to whenever we didn't know her personality really, in a sense, we were like, oh my God, she's aggressive or whatever. But it's like, that's just us being new. But throughout the time though, it's like we're starting to adapt and we're starting to be able to learn. And then we have these elementary lessons coming up, and I'm excited about that. So explain that out a little bit more.
The group classes?
Yeah, let's obviously you do like the private lessons, and then and I'm learning about that. I'm like, oh yeah, the private lessons would be cool, but it's like, I read about the whole factor of a dog being able to be, to pay attention in a distracting environment with other animals, and how important that is too. And that's like one of the main reasons we wanted to do that group class.
Yeah, group classes are really great for the vast majority of kind of dogs that don't have behavior issues.
Yeah.
I like the challenge that they have to focus around a lot of other dogs and they have to learn around other dogs. They're not ideal for every dog and every person. That's okay. But they are, when I look at my group classes, we teach 10 to 11 different skills in the elementary class.
Yeah.
And so you get a broad look at skills, but none of them are super in depth. Or at least that's the way I've structured my classes. So again, education background. I really step up the skills in each level of class. So we have a lot of skills that we introduce in elementary school. You don't learn them in super depth, right? Because we just don't have the time to teach all the things and give you a lot of depth. You get lots of things, and then you get the depth by increasing your, going into middle school and then going into high school. And then we've got our CGC at the high school level. So yeah, I mean, it's a good way to get a broad look at basic manners with your dogs, or at least in my classes, that's how we
and then you could focus on areas that you want to focus on.
Yeah, right. So you get all the skills, and one of the things I always tell my clients, because it is ridiculously overwhelming when you're trying to teach in 6 weeks, teach 11 new skills.
Yeah.
It's not likely that your dog is going to fully master all 11 skills in 6 weeks. It's just not something that I expect to have happen. But focus on the things you're struggling with the most. So if you're struggling with loose leash walking the most, just do 1 or 2 reps of the, the down that we were working on, and focus your work on the loose leash walking.
Absolutely.
Because you get a lot of stuff. We throw a lot of crap at you at once. In part because everybody has different needs.
So it's hard to appease. It's hard to appease everyone, but it's like, to you offer that. I mean, for you offering that broad range of it all, it allows you to see how your dog responds to one command or cue rather than like, what they're having the most problems on. So it's like, it lets you like be able to, it gives you a better, situation for you to, highlight the areas that need it.
Mm-hmm. And it gives you a chance to kind of learn about your dog a little bit, what works for your dog, All right. So one of the biggest lessons that people learn. So I'm, obviously we've been talking for a while now. I use a boatload of food when I'm training dogs, in part because my dogs will always have to eat.
Yes.
There is never a time in this dog's life where they are not going to need to eat food.
Yeah.
And so I can always use food if I want to with training. I just use their dog food. So my dogs, my 11-and-a-half-year-old dog, when we do training for fun, I still pull out his food and use his food to do training. Like he has to eat. I'm going to make him work for it.
Yeah.
There's no freeloaders in this house. You got to earn your keep.
Yeah.
But when I have where that was going, the big lesson that a lot of people learn is value of food makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
So when you come to school, and I tell people about this before the first class with the puppy, I recommend bringing something like chicken, or if their belly's okay with it, some cheese, or, something human food that is savory. And what people often resist that because they don't want their dog to learn how to beg. Newsflash, they don't generally learn to beg unless you feed them from the table, from the plate.
Yeah.
That's generally how that works. But they're at the school, they're trying to use their Zooks, they're trying to use their dog food, and the dog's like, I don't give a shit about you. That dog over there is way more exciting. And then I don't always, sometimes I have some chicken with me and I'll give the owner some chicken, and the dog's like, I'm perfect angel. I will do whatever you want.
Nadja does not care about Zooks. No. She does not care about them little botchy little treats. She just doesn't care about them.
Yeah. And not a dog who has food motivated as others.
She'd rather eat her kibble almost.
And that could be a fact for sure. Some dogs do like their food a lot. In a distracting environment, it's not even the food you're competing with, it's the other dogs.
Yeah.
And so finding something that's better than other dogs can be
the high value treats.
Yeah, the high value stuff. And the dogs decide the value. So many years ago, I had a lovely client who was in a bunch of classes over several years, just for fun, doing rally obedience and fun sports. She came to class with tortillas. The dog loves flour tortillas. And so I saw her dropping stuff on the floor. Are you dropping paper? And I looked, just like, oh no, it's tortillas.
And the dog loved that.
The dog loves tortillas.
Really?
And yeah. I mean,
that's funny.
He would probably choose tortillas over chicken.
Yeah, Nadja, she loves cheese. Mm-hmm. She would choose cheese over anything. Loves carrots. Mm-hmm. It's so weird because like some things will give her, she just really doesn't care about. The other day, us getting this dog, we, I'm not getting dollar store treats for anything like that. So I go to like the nice place. Like there's a Leone's that's down near where we live, and I frequent there. They know me by name now. As soon as we got her, we went and we got a bed, everything we needed, toys. And I go in there just like once a week, and I'll find a new treat just to try to like keep her flavors, just switching back and forth. You know what I mean? And I found a bag of freeze-dried sardines, and that's the newest thing that she got to try. She loves it.
Yeah.
It's just cool to see what they like, what they dislike. And you could definitely tell that from her being a puppy to now that her taste buds, grew into it a little bit more, because you could tell what she likes. Mm-hmm. And it's cool to like give her new things and like see her like, what is this? And like anytime you give her anything, she takes it, runs back to her little spot, and just wants to be cozy and have a snack. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's such like a rewarding, like I'll look at her sometimes and I almost just like well up.
Yeah.
Because like, it's so rewarding because it's like we're responsible for this, this creature, and like, she's putting her trust in us, and we're working so hard together to like try to give her, the best life that we could give her, and not be able to communicate with her. It's like, I talk to her like she's a human all day, every day. I just talk to her, sing to her, and it's like, she's probably annoyed by now, but I could see so much improvement, even just like after each week. It's so cool to be able to see them like grow and, fall into who they are becoming. And
yeah.
It's interesting.
It's one I think the rewarding parts of why we have relationships with dogs is that it is rewarding, right?
Yeah.
Like my dogs are, they compete in a bunch of sports. They compete highly in some of the sports. We are very successful with things, and they're very, very, very well trained dogs, but they also are just, it's not robotic in they're like,
they're not like soldiers.
Yeah, they're not soldiers. And we have this fabulous relationship where we can have like, I expect precision. I expect flashy. I expect really nice skills when we're in the ring. And like, I want you to be good at what you do. I don't just, I don't aim for okay.
Yeah.
Right. When I'm in the ring, I want to have, and we're always working towards it. Sometimes, except I don't train my dogs nearly as much as I should. But when I'm training my dogs, I want a particular look when we're in the rally or obedience ring. I want flashy type of stuff. And so they have really nice skills. They're super flashy, super tight and clean, but they're goofballs at home.
Yeah.
And we've got this beautiful relationship of like, they're super pumped, super excited. They're crazy.
Yeah, it's so
and
fun.
I like that.
It's
like,
fun.
I don't need to have or want to have that.
I didn't want to have a soldier, as a dog. Like, I could go to one of these places and have a soldier. I don't want a soldier. I want a dog that has a personality, that wants to be well behaved and knows when to, when it's time to get crazy. And, when we're in the ball field and I take the leash off and she could go nuts, that's a period of time. But, I also want her to understand like when it's time to calm down and go to bed. And, now we've been, the most recent thing that we've been working on is, so in the beginning, we would let Nog just sleep with us sometimes. And now she's big enough to jump in our bed now. So we've been working on, some days we'll have her in. And then some days we're just like, you got to sleep on your bed. And like the last few nights, there was 2 days in a row that we let her sleep with us. So the third day we're like, oh, let's put her down on her bed. We got her a nice memory foam bed. It's awesome. I would sleep on it myself. And, I'll see her head poke up and I'll just be like off and like lay down. And she realizes, and it's so nice to see like, her respect for us and like what we're saying. And like, we could really tell like a difference from her being like more young than she is now. Like let's say a month ago, she did not care what we said. She didn't care that we were cueing her to lay down. But now it's like she's hearing us and like respecting our, down. And like
found you guys interesting and valuable. And now it's
valuable.
worth listening to you instead of like, who are you?
Yeah, I love it. It's so interesting to, like we were talking about before, it's like the reach that we have was with the internet and like what you could do and all these puzzles and learning about different things. And I walk into this pet store and it's like, I'm in there for an hour, just like looking at all these like cool things that they have for these dogs and like the toys and, things that, it's fun to like, yes, that Snoop is her favorite thing in the world. She loves it so much. And it's so weird because it's just like, it's such a simple thing, but she gets so excited. And like these lick mats now she loves. And it's just like, it's really rewarding to see, the progression, even only over a month and a half. And, we got her January 30th. We didn't even have her 2 months yet. And, the growth that has happened in them 2 months physically and mentally is incredible.
Yeah. They're maturing and they're becoming, they start understanding how things work in the world, right? Like they're in our world and they're trying to adjust their doggy things to our human requests and how we like things to be. But once they get it and they kind of understand and they find comfort and they have a relationship with who they're with, it just fits in for the most part. We don't have like, they tend to just get it. And that's what makes dogs so like,
it's interesting.
Unique.
It's unique. Like, it is.
I mean, we certainly, as our own species, spent time domesticating them and getting them to be partners with us. But we've taken that domestication to a whole different level with dogs in a way that we haven't with anything else. Yeah. Even cats, like they're domesticated, but it's a different type of relationship. And it's so interesting how the two species have kind of evolved together.
Yeah.
It's very cool stuff.
It is. It's super, super interesting. So, I mean, what are your goals, for the next, goals. 5 years, let's say? Like, what do you want to do? Do you just want to keep like progressing, your curriculum and, do you want to open another space? Like what kind of things do you want to do?
Yeah. So I think, there are a limit to how many hours a day there are.
Yeah,
so
unfortunately.
I'm looking, right. So, I mean, I want to keep growing and helping more dogs and kind of, having other trainers who I think are, skilled and they're coming up and becoming their own trainers. I want to help them get better and give them a place that they can have a job. So we're, slowly but surely, training up trainers who will be able to offer more classes, because you're right, my classes fill really fast. My classes that don't even start until April 21st have been full since the beginning of March.
Yeah, they were full whenever, I think there was only 2 spots left whenever I signed up like a month ago.
Yeah, there's 1 puppy spot left in the April 21st class, and those puppies are only 3 weeks old. So, right? So unless you know you're getting a puppy from either a rescue litter or a breeder, you're not going to sign up for a puppy class.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things we're working on, is trying to increase our offerings for group classes, because the need is there.
Yeah.
I can't do it all, so we're looking to expand that out. I want to be able to expand what we're offering, and keep doing my behavior stuff, and give people who want in-home stuff. Probably looking to have one of my trainers start taking up on some private in-home things as we go along.
Yeah.
Just to give more availability, because I'm very busy and
Yeah.
I'm one person. And if anybody's waiting for an email from me, I'm very sorry.
Yeah.
I'm trying really hard to also have, my dogs have a life too, and they need their needs met. And
I mean, you have a life too. It's like,
sometimes, yes.
Yeah, sometimes it's like you gotta have some time for yourself to be able to, enjoy it. What do you do on your free time? Whenever you're not training dogs or letting your dogs go out, like, what do you do for fun?
Well, so it really is. Because of my timing, I try to multitask. So I try to spend hours in the woods with my dogs off leash every week.
Yeah.
Or we are just going hiking. We go to spots where it's legal to have them off leash, because we really like to follow leash laws. So we go to spots where they're allowed to be off leash, and we go hiking. We spend, hours in the woods. They get to decompress and get to be dogs, because I do ask a lot of my dogs.
How do you initiate that to where you're able to let your dog off a leash in the woods without them running away?
Yeah. So, I started with puppies. My puppies, when I get them, are, at least the last 2 have been babies when I got them, and babies are less likely to stray from you. So I start 9 weeks old. You are off the leash. You're in the woods with me. And typically what happens, that first walk, they heal. They're like, oh my God, don't lose me. Please stay with me.
That's interesting.
And so I start them really early off leash, because they are inclined to stay with me. I also start them with the big dogs, so they're likely to stay with the big dogs. They're not going to go chasing after anything. And so they learn those skills from the other dogs that they're with a lot of the times. But I start them super, super young, 9 weeks in the woods off leash with me. We practice recalls. Recall is such an important piece of having your dog off leash, but it's not the only piece.
Yeah.
So we work on checking in and learning to there's a zone for puppies that, if you get past 20 or 30 feet, I'm probably going to call you back.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit older puppies. Baby puppies, you can't get them. You cannot convince the puppy to walk away from you half the time.
Yeah. Naja, I would never expect her to just run away from me.
Yeah.
It's very weird, because like I have her in that baseball field, and we had like a 40-foot lead, and I would just leave it on, but I would let her run around just in case I needed to like step on it and hold her back. But I let her off now, and she doesn't like go run out of the fence or anything. Like, she'll be curious, and I still get concerned that like, she might just dart away if she sees a dog, because she loves every single dog in person. But that's what I want to work on is
I get it early, and
it's like how to do that.
I have many cookies for recalling, and we build up our recalls, and I put lots of emphasis in coming back to me, and coming back to me means you might then get to go chase it.
Yeah.
After it is now long since gone, but you can chase where it used to be.
Yeah.
So I start them young. I get them used to being off leash and still listening to me when we're off leash. And a lot of times my dogs are actually much better, not really, but in theory, they're much better off leash than on.
Yeah.
Just because I spend more time with it there. Right. So we're off in the woods all the time, and we're around squirrels and bunnies and deer. I have a video of him.
None of them ever just tear. I saw the video of him tear off after a deer, I think, right? He saw a deer.
He didn't. So he saw the deer and he recalled to me, because he's a very, very good boy. So he's
that's good.
The dog that's here, I don't think we mentioned it. He's a 14-month-old, 3/4 whippet, 1/4 border collie. So he is a dog that's designed to chase things down and kill them. And so I have a video of him in the woods, off leash. He was just running and frolicking. And then he stopped and he sniffed. And then I'm like, what are you sniffing? And what are you stopping? And then I see the deer probably, maybe probably 30 to 50 feet behind him, just bouncing. And I was like, oh God. So I had a panic moment there
Yeah.
because, I mean, he's recalled from a lot of things, but he's also an adolescent dog.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they, so one of my dogs previously, she was off leash all the time as a baby. And right around, I think 9 or 10 months, she got a little bit too interested in other dogs and wasn't able to recall from them.
Mm-hmm.
So she went back on the long line when we were around those dogs for a short period of time to, no. You have to
Sharpen
come
up
back.
a little bit.
Yep. I just wasn't going to let her make those mistakes. So
Yeah.
anyway, so he's a teenage dog and he has a teenage brain and sometimes he doesn't make good choices, but he makes good choices most of the time. But I was a little bit worried, but he came back like a very, very good boy. So he has done.
Yeah, he's a cute dog.
He is. He's a very good boy for a young dog and an adolescent. He's very easy.
That's good.
It is. Good.
Okay, so let's get to the ending segment of the podcast because
Yes.
we could talk forever. We're already at 2 hours.
Are we really? Holy
Yeah,
crap.
you can never tell.
I can yap for dog things all the time.
I know, and it's so interesting to talk about. It's so interesting to hear about, your perspective at all, because it's like you have a way, deeper look into things, and you're good at communicating it to someone who doesn't.
I try.
Okay, so the ending segment that I do with all my guests is something called Desert Island Questions.
Okay.
Oh wait, messed it
There you
up.
go.
I had it down. I'm still learning this board. But Desert Island Questions, whenever I give each of my guests 3 categories to take with them on a desert island to use until they expire. Whenever I say expire, you die. So the first category is 3 things to watch on a desert island. So you get a TV and you get a DVD player and you get to pick 3 DVDs.
I would probably do Day After Tomorrow because I could watch that movie forever.
With Jake Gyllenhaal and Dennis
Yes.
Quaid? Yeah, that's a good one.
It's always first snow of the season. Every time I have to find that movie.
It's
and
been a
watch
long
it.
time since I've seen that. I loved it though. I thought it was really good.
I don't even know if I really like the movie a ton or if it's just like
It's just a good movie.
ritual of
Yeah,
like what I will put on.
It's a good movie.
Yeah. I would probably put. Can I have a streaming device?
Yeah.
Okay. I would probably have Hamilton with me.
Hamilton. Mm-hmm. I haven't watched it yet.
Oh, I'm a big fan, but I'm a musical theater fan in the general. So
That's fine. I
I'd
was
be down with
singing
that.
Grease this morning.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Such a good boy.
He's such a good boy. Can I just get the History Channel?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Like the History Channel?
Like documentaries of all sorts of weird stuff. I
Yeah.
am like,
I like that too.
I've got weird, like, factoid knowledge stuff going on.
I know. We watch everything, the murder porn stuff to the learning about. I watched a documentary about Sriracha the other day.
Right.
It was fantastic. I just like learning about things.
Yeah, me too. I love learning stuff.
Now, do you read?
I do.
So the next category is 3 books to take on a desert island. So if you had to pick 3 of them, what would they be?
I would probably take the whole Outlander series.
Okay.
Which is, I'm going to put in one book. It's like 8.
That's fine.
And it's like 4,000 pages long. So I'd probably take that. I would take. I don't know.
It's a hard question.
Yeah. Because I like to read a lot. So there are lots of books. I'd probably take Harry Potter.
I just started listening to the audiobook.
It's good.
I never have dived into the books, but I'm a big fan of the movies. And I came back from a work trip and I listened to the first one. I'm probably 4/5 of the way through, and it's great. Mm-hmm. Definitely is great.
Yeah, I tried reading it when they first came out. I really cannot stand J.K. Rowling's writing style.
Oh.
After I saw the movies and I could have a picture playing,
Yeah,
I could go back
exactly.
and read it and really like it. Yeah.
I think that was a benefit for me too, that I was able to, I already watched the movie of it. So like I was able to piece together the pictures a little bit better than just like having to pull them all out from random places.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's a good way to describe it or not, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I tried and I could not deal with her writing, but I could get over it when I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And then the third one might be, I'd like to pick a dog book, but I don't think I can.
No.
Yeah, I don't. There are just too many that have been like, good books.
Yeah.
That.
But are those books that you want to read on a desert island?
Yeah, some of them, man. Some of them, man, I would, because I'm always finding something new. So there's a really dense book called Accelerated Learning that is super dense, hard to read. That might be one that I take with me, because after 50 years on a desert island, I will probably get everything out of that book. It is so dense. It's so good, but so dense, and it's real small. But man, I'll go with Accelerated Learning.
All right, that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, so the third category is 3 CDs. So if you got to pick three CDs to take with you, I'll let you do greatest hits, so you don't have to.
Okay, so I would actually probably do like an oldies, 50s and 60s.
Okay,
I could do that easy peasy. I would do the original Rent soundtrack.
I loved it.
That actually might be all I need, is the original Rent soundtrack. On repeat all the time. And I would take 90s.
90s?
Just the greatest 90s of any kind of genre. Throw it all in there.
All right. Yeah, who doesn't like the 90s?
50s, 60s, 90s, and musical theater.
So the third to last question is the death row meal. So if you got to eat your last meal of all time, whatever you want from wherever you want, I need an appetizer, a main course, and a dessert.
I would probably do lounge fries from North Park Lounge.
Lounge fries.
Yes, it's just normal fries with the liquidy nacho cheese, not nacho flavored, but that liquidy cheese with the normal cheese and bacon on top.
Okay.
I would take that, and my main course would probably be I would just say like a grilled chicken breast with like asparagus or grilled zucchini.
Yeah, that would be really good. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, and like mashed potatoes or something down homey. And dessert would be probably one of the like the BJ's cookie ice cream things, like the deep dish cookies. Yeah. That's probably what I do.
Okay, those are good answers. Okay, so the second to last question that I ask everyone is: if you were getting ready for a road trip and you go into a gas station, what would be the one snack that you get?
Swedish fish.
Oh, you Swedish fish fan? Mm-hmm. I used to love them.
Or the all pink Starburst.
Yeah, I like that. I used to love Swedish fish so much, but now I'm like, I don't know if I can't really eat them too much now.
I think that's the joy of them, because I don't eat them unless it's like a special occasion.
Yeah, special occasion. Yeah. Okay. The last question that I ask everyone is: if you could have a conversation with anyone alive or dead, who would it be and why? And it can't be a loved one.
Oh God, so many things. I would probably say, I don't know. God. This is the hard part of having like so many interests.
Yeah.
I don't know how to narrow it down. Yeah. Because there's some people like sciencey people I want to know things from. And then there's dog people that I want to know things from. And there's just weird people that I want to know things from. I'm going to go with Ken Ramirez.
Who is that?
So Ken Ramirez he's alive. And he is a trainer who used to be the lead at the Shed Aquarium.
Oh.
And so he has done a ton of work with marine mammals, and he does some interesting stuff with, he has a very broad spectrum of training interests. And right now he's working at the Karen Pryor Academy farm doing training with farm wildlife, which is kind of cool sometimes. So I'd probably have a conversation with him.
That's a good one. That's a good answer.
I think so.
You got some pretty good answers.
I try.
I appreciate you taking the time today and like coming over and talking to me about this.
For sure, we can do it again.
I was excited to hear about how you kind of got into where you did, and you have like everyone else, you got your own
weird story.
Yeah, your own weird story.
Lots of roadblocks. Lots of doors slamming in my face and windows opening.
I mean, that's what it is. I'm someone who kind of feels like things happen for a reason. Mm-hmm. I definitely do. And I didn't as much whenever I was younger, but I definitely do now.
Yeah. And I think I read when I made the decision to change from teaching, I read it. I was like, I'm going to think that I got told twice, noted for teaching for a reason. So we're going to
Yeah, why not,
detour.
right?
Let's do something else.
Okay, so give everyone where they could follow you, your website, Instagram, all that.
So I am at successjustclicks.com. If you look at Success Just Clicks on Facebook, we're there. We are at Success Just Clicks on Instagram. We are not on TikTok because I don't have the time of day. If somebody would like to take over my time and help me do TikTok, sure, I'll do TikTok because I got dogs that do really fun stuff, and I sometimes it could be interesting, but no. So we're not on TikTok, but those are the two. Facebook and Instagram are the best places to find me. And we will have new group classes coming out since I have 4,000 emails about upcoming classes. Classes now are scheduled for June. So June classes will be coming out in the next couple weeks. So you'll have to wait a while, but such is my life. Sorry.
I'm excited to get her into the
It's going to be so much fun.
Classes the end of April. I think it'll be fun for sure. How many people are going to be in that class?
So 7 is our max number. We dropped it down a little bit. So normally we'd have up to 8 in class during non-COVID times, but COVID times we've dropped it down to 7. We have everybody spaced out like 20 to 25 feet apart, which is super nice. The training center is perfect for being able to still have group classes and everybody
it's big.
Far apart. And yeah, it works out quite nicely.
Well, I appreciated it very much. You could scroll down. I will have the website on here, and I will have a link for her Instagram, so you could follow along with all that. But everyone else that's listening, I appreciate it very much. As usual, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. That is the biggest help that you could do for me. But every week, we're here with interesting people and interesting stories. So thanks for listening, and I will call you right back.